I want to welcome everyone to the Menlo Park Fire Protection District Board meeting for May 18th. We concluded a closed session a short time ago. There were no reportable items from that meeting. Michelle, would you go ahead and call the roll, please? Michelle, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, of course, I had myself on mute. Director Bernstein,
Present.
Director Jones. I'll come back to Director Jones, Director Crawley,
Sorry.
Present.
and Director Jones,
Here.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
I think you need to hit Virginia.
Oh, no, she got me.
I got
Okay.
I think I talked at the same time as Robert, though.
There we go. Would you please join me in the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to
the
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
to which
for
which
which
it
stands
one
one
nation,
nation
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty.
liberty and
liberty and
justice for
for
all.
all.
Right, thank you. Yeah, as I mentioned previously, there were no reportable actions from our closed meeting. Michelle, is there any public comment?
We received one email public comment from Lynn Bramlett, and I will put that in the record for the minutes.
Did
And
she?
that was
want-
it.
so
Oh,
she-
we do.
did-
We
did
actually
she
do
wanna
have
speak-
one.
Did she want to speak on that, or is that, or do we know?
She wasn't able to attend, and that's why she emailed it in. So she wanted to make sure that you were
Okay.
aware of it and that it would be noted in the minutes.
You know, I read the item, and I would ask if it hasn't been forwarded to the EPREP committee, that it be forwarded to them.
I can do that.
Okay, well, thank you. For
All
that.
the
Thank you.
directors were forwarded. I did forward the public comment to all the directors before the meeting.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you. You know, I see our first time is the report from the fire chief, but I'd like to take them out of order a little bit. And we just have one presentation to make this evening. I think we can do it fairly rapidly here. The district, of course, has been in existence for more than 100 years now. But the Menlo Park Historical Association is celebrating their 50th anniversary. So I think that's very, very fitting that that we're able to acknowledge this newcomer to the Menlo Park area and recognize the many things that they do to make sure that the community is aware of the rich history that surrounds us all. So Michelle has prepared this wonderful proclamation, and I won't take time now to read all the whereases and therefores, but I would invite all of you to visit their the association meeting room, and hopefully it'll be presented in a prominent place, and we'll all get to see it. So, Mr. Johnson, I know you're the president of the association.
Yes, sir.
I would invite you to make any remarks that you care to.
Well, yeah, thank you, Jim, and thank you, board, for this really great honor. I am pleased on behalf of the association members and the board and the officers to accept the proclamation and acknowledge it on behalf of the association. We are really thrilled to be celebrating 50 years of engagement in service to the community, and are looking forward to another 50 or more years as we progress through the next decades. It's especially important for me, as I am the third generation Menlo Park resident and frankly third generation member of the Historical Association Board. My grandfather, L.L. Johnston, was one of the co-founders of the association back in '71. And it's an honor for me to be here tonight to accept it on behalf of the association and all the wonderful officers and directors and members that have been with us since the beginning in 71. So thank you again very much. And I appreciate Jim Lewis for your reach out to the district to enable us to be recipients of this.
All right, well, thank you so much. And like I say, we all look forward to visiting the, if you could just tell us publicly where the association, or the Historical Society meeting place is.
Well, interesting you asked that question. The Historical Association's office is actually located in the basement of the library, the Menlo Park Library at 800 Alma. And as the COVID would have it, we haven't had access to that office, nor has the public, for well over a year. Although we are looking forward and have an understanding that will soon change, hopefully, as we get into the month of July, and would invite all of you to come down and visit the office and peruse the records. Also visit our website and our Facebook page. So there are a lot of exciting things that are going on, and we have a lot more exciting things planned for the next few years. Most recently, if you've seen the replica of the gates, the Menlo Gates outside the library, that's our doing, and we have a lot more programming and events and activities to, again, educate the community and allow the community to really understand how rich the history of the city is and how it's grown over the years and how it continues to grow.
Well, again, on behalf of the entire board, thank you again so much for your work, and we all look forward to visiting the library.
And I would say, as a resident of the city, thank you for all the work you do and the Fire Protection District does to ensure our safety, and particularly over the last few months, and clearly the history of the city. So thank you.
I'll pass that on to the people that do the real work.
I appreciate you doing so.
Thanks again. So, Chief, I know you had talked about perhaps reordering the agenda a bit to do a couple of the items out of order. So I'll turn it over to you to introduce the.
Yeah, I would. Thank you. I appreciate that. If we could go items 15 and 14 first. The reason for that is that we have two personnel that are involved with both equipment and then apparatus, Randy Kelly and Walt Vidosh. They're both working tonight at station 77 and 1. They'll be out of service during the time that they're presenting. So I'm going to try and make sure, we limit that amount of time, but certainly give them the time to speak to things that they've been working on and are obviously passionate about. So if you don't mind, we'll start on 15, if that works for you, and then we'll have Walt come up.
Chief, I see Virginia has her hand raised.
Yeah, just a really quick thing. Can we just dispense with the consent calendar first, and then just get whatever we want out of the way, and then just, go directly to the regular agenda and start with item 15. I don't know how many items are going to be pulled from the consent calendar, Harold. Would that be okay? Because then we've gotten a lot of the business out of the way.
Well, Virginia, I prefer, why don't we do these two and then we'll do the consent.
Okay.
We should be able to go that pretty rapidly.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to give another alternative.
Okay.
Yeah, so if that's acceptable, then if we get the agenda put up, and then also, you can look in your packet. If you have a hard copy, you know how big it is. It's pretty enormous. So we're working off of page 241 in the packet is item 15. It's the sole source for Quake. Walt Vidosh is here to talk about that. Sam Kosman as well, who's obviously the head of the company, is here as well. And just to kind of tee it up before Walt comes on, we try to give you a background, in here. This has gone before both the Finance Committee, as some of you know, and then most recently before Strategic Planning. We were in a MOU with Quake for several years in regards to allowing them to use the training site and develop the technology that they've, kind of come upon. Started out as a in-face piece device. It's evolved into a helmet mount. which I think is a lot more practical for a lot of different reasons. And most recently, as they're getting ready to go into full production, we've kind of re-engaged to test that, and Walt can cover that. The interesting thing that happened at finance was we tried to do this like we do our normal thermal imaging cameras. And, I'm not making an excuse for this, but, remember in the days where these cameras could be as high as $60,000 per unit, they're now down, the handhelds are now down around the $11,000 to $13,000 number. And we literally have one on every engine company. And the reason for that is it's the captain that uses it. Nevertheless, it's still, not a hands-free device, which is, I think, a key aspect, but it's better than crawling around in smoke in a burning building, probably the most dangerous thing that we do, looking for victims and trying to put out a fire, sometimes all simultaneously. So as we've worked with Quake over the years, we looked at what they're doing. We think that we're ready to move forward. I think there's three pieces to this. One is, and it's timely, to add it to the budget. The second one is to allow the equipment committee to have an open PO, so sole source on this equipment. And then thirdly is to go and execute the agreement. I know there's been questions about NFPA. I know there's been questions about why sole source. Is there anything else like this? Walt and Sam can answer all those questions, but I got to give Director Bernstein credit, because as we debated this in finance, he said, well, why can't every firefighter have one of these? And it wasn't like it was a strange question, but we're so used to, again, because of cost, only putting one per unit. So that opened up a different dialogue and moved it into strategic planning. And it turns out we can do that, and we can certainly afford to do that. And, from a life safety, bottom line, we're the only ones that do this type of work, and, saving life and property aspect. It's actually, it was a great discussion. And I think it was valuable from the standpoint that, our firefighters are excited, and Walt will, I think, relay that, to be able to have something like this, not only for just the captain, but for all of them, because it allows them in certain conditions as well to find out which way they came in, or to even declare a Mayday where they can be found if in fact somebody were to get lost. We just had a couple, or at least one firefighter fatality on the East Coast. I know Sam's talking to that department. There may be two, one's in pretty serious condition last I heard. That's the ultimate situation we don't want to have, is firefighters that go into burning buildings that don't come out. I know we had two directors, Director Bernstein and Director Jones, that were able to go out to the demo, see it for themselves. I think it's probably worthwhile to maybe let them talk about that too. But without further ado, I'll let Walt take it from his aspect, which is he's the head of our equipment committee, and he's also the guy that's specifically in charge of what we call the TIC program, or thermal imaging camera program. And I'll let him kind of go through the item. So Walt, if you want to start off, that would be great. And Michelle, I don't know if we need to unmute him or.
That's me, Chief. I'm sorry. My
There you
apologies.
go, Walt. Thank you.
Mr. Technology over here. Good evening, everybody. Walt Vidosh, Captain, Menlo Park Fire. Been here since 2002. I'm in charge of the tools and equipment program, which is in charge of purchasing the equipment for the rigs, all of them, between the heavies, the reserves, the rescues, and everything. And that's our responsibility. And that's something that we don't take lightly. So this product that we're talking about right now is important to us, to our citizens, to our directors, to anybody that we serve within our community, and especially for the safety of our members as well. So for me, I always look at our products that we look at for anything, for tools and equipment, for what we want to put on our rigs. We always take the path of, our business is service, right? So we start there, and then we say, what is the best product that can help us deliver the service that we want, right? So that's where we start, and then we go from there. So this product also falls under the aspect of our philosophy of innovation, right? To meet the needs of the present, the past, and the future. So that's kind of where my goals are and where they lay when I start to look at products. And I also try to approach it as I am a citizen of the district. So if I was living in this district, what kind of tools and equipment would I like to see on the apparatus or used, to help my fire department, provide the best service to me. So that's just a background on me on how I approach products that we look at and products that we test and when we go to conferences and all that kind of stuff, that's kind of what we're looking for. And the last part of that is usually, when we do these things, we ask our members what they think about these type of products. What is important to them. And so before we make a final decision, we go out, we ask our members, we bring products, we have them test them. And, we sort of do like a Survey Monkey type of thing, and we get feedback from our members. So that's how we kind of approach the products that we do and the things that we want to put on our rigs. So since 2018, we started working with Quake, and this product started developing, and they started doing the R&D, starting then. So right now, to the point to where the product that we're currently seeing and using is amazing for us, for our citizens, for your families, for yourselves. So my goal for us is to get this approved for our members and get it for our citizens and get this contract settled and basically just take our innovation philosophy and move it to the next step, because the first step for us would be like the first gen of this product, and then we would actually build on top of that, having the open PO and being able to R&D this product and to make it better and to get it to all of our members that serve the community, so they can have a say, in this actual product moving forward as well, right? Because we want to always get it to the end users, because they're going to be the ones that come to us and give us the best advice, moving forward with these products. So I can go on as far as what it does. I don't know if you guys have questions or if you want me to continue on the value of it for us as first responders, or what else you need from me.
Well, I think, why don't we open it up to questioning right now, Captain. Virginia, I see your hand up.
Oh, no, I agree that this would be a good tool. I just wanted to get the feedback from Chuck and Robert, since they were at the demo yesterday, and just to get their thoughts. I mean, unfortunately, I couldn't make it, even though I wanted to make it, but just having been around this whole, thermal imaging technology when it was being discussed a few years ago, I think, it would be a good enhancement for our crews. So I since I wasn't at the demo, I'd love to hear the feedback from the two directors who were there.
Chuck or Robert, do you have any observations to share?
I'll share some after Robert goes.
Were you afraid, Chuck? Okay, since I'm put on the spot, Walt, I think I would like to hear from you in terms of some of the other values that you and the firefighters, what your thoughts are along those lines for the equipment. I was there. I came after Chuck to the demonstration, and I was absolutely blown away. I don't get too excited about many things, but this particular product for me was held up 5, almost 6 different pros for why we should actually purchase this equipment, this particular saving device. I think the cost, comparing what I heard, was from the handheld to the helmet. There's a substantial cost at least half the cost being saved when we only got one to share around to all the truck. But here in this situation, it seemed like everyone that's on the truck would be able, who's out there, will be able to have this particular advice, because you never, if I'm correct, you never know. There are some people assigned to do certain things, but you never know when you may have to bust into a smoky situation. The second thing, I think the technology will to the customers who is the fire department here has, I think it can be built. There's a learning kind of situation that goes on, and I think have went on with other as the device, as new technology come in and feedback is given back to the company. I think there's an opportunity to form a good relationship where we can help improve the product, over time. Right now, I think it's the best thing out there that I've seen so far, and talking to a couple of people. And the third thing is that when they gave us a demonstration, I put on the helmet. I had my little 3D glass, almost like Dick Tracy, with the or Star Trek with the thing in your eye. And I was really amazed as to when I went into the smoke, I was kind of apprehensive, but once I flicked on all the switches, which was so conveniently placed at your fingertips, that when I went into the smoke and turned everything on, I was able to, once I got focused and my fear left of, hey, what am I doing in this smoke, to begin to see images. I mean, literally in front of me, and to be able to change the images from green to red and to back to green, depending on the situation. I thought that was amazing. And having a laser kind of to help guide you, that comes out to help guide you towards the image. I thought that was, to me, that someone said it was like being aware of the victim, knowing where they are, that victim awareness, which is really, I thought was fantastic. The fourth thing I looked at was that the commander who's out there, the captain, or whoever is back at the truck, have a bird's eye view of being able to see what the firefighter is seeing inside that room, that smoke, and to be able to kind of monitor that person, because if I'm correct, that sometimes when you get in there, I never had that opportunity to get into a smoke-filled room and everything's burning around you and you're trying to grab somebody to come out, that if you get in trouble, who do you call for? And to be able to have the device itself, a button on the device that can be clicked in that smoky room, and someone back at the truck or outside monitoring you on a laptop, and if you hit this button that says Mayday, that means you're in trouble. That means that everybody else, the team, would know that, hey, a firefighter is down, and we know exactly where that person is, because they've been able to see and monitor where that person go. And the last thing, the fifth thing, it truly, to me, is a life-saving feature. And those features that I saw, besides the Mayday button, was being able to know where the exits are. If you go into a room and everything gets filled up with smoke behind it, how do you get out? You start feeling around the room. This, with the arrow, I turned around and it pointed me towards where the direction where I came in. And so I thought that was and that in and of itself, one of the neat features about that particular helmet, that it truly is, I think, a life-saving product. And I think every firefighter that's on our trucks need to have this because we never know. So I'll leave it there for now. Chuck?
Okay, thank you, Robert. Chuck, did you have anything to share?
Yeah, let me just add a few things, although Robert, I think, was eloquent in describing um, almost everything that I also saw. I do want to just clarify that my question about why wouldn't everybody have one was a true question. It wasn't an endorsement. I try to ask questions where I'm actually looking for an answer. And my question was, at the time we were talking about a plan whereby the captain would have it, and the captain was the second person in the building. And so the first person in, being the hose puller, he's blind, he can't see anything, and he's walking into who knows what. And it didn't make sense to me. It seemed to me that if we were going to try to test this somehow, we ought to at least give everybody in that engine company or in that station group a piece of equipment so that they could interact with it. So it was a true question, but I was also dazzled by the technology. I had an opportunity to walk into a smoke-filled room. I couldn't see my hand literally 6 inches in front of my face. And with the helmet, I could make out the sides of the building. I could make out a pretend victim. I mean, I actually was able to see. And what I think is really quite amazing, in some ways, I think thermal imaging doesn't really describe it, because the image that you see is part of the whole thing. But I think what's really impressive is really 2 other things. I mean, Robert referred to the communications side of it, where you could actually have, these instant communications like evacuate the building or Mayday or something of that sort, that is separate and apart from the normal communications, which are full of chatter in lots of different directions at one time. This is something where an individual could be tracked individually who is in a kind of a perilous situation. But the other part that to me was really, I think, helpful was the whole navigation part of this, where the person walking in there is actually creating a map of the space, which is something that then can be observed by people on the outside. So you can track where the problems are, you can track where the people in the building are, whether they're the victims or the firefighters. And you actually, it leaves a little breadcrumb kind of thing so that you can, it's like a GPS when you're hiking, you can find your way back to where you came in. And as Robert said, the arrows show you how to get out of this space, or at least not necessarily how to get out, it shows you how to get back to the place you started from. But with an observer on the outside looking at a screen and so forth, they could direct people to alternative entrances and exits and so forth. I mean, I think it records what happened, which means it could be used for training purposes later. It could also be used for diagnostic purposes. So for example, if something happens where there's up in the lighting in the ceiling, there's a hot spot and that starts the fire, the thermal imaging probably could show the hot spot and where it started and so forth. So it just seemed to me it was a diagnostic tool, it was a training tool. There's a lot of software development that's gone into it that's more than just what one sees with the eye. I was concerned about, there were 2 questions that had been raised. I don't say it concerned, these were on my mind. One was the fact that it hasn't been approved by someone, did that represent a danger to firefighters or something of that sort? And my conclusion from that is that it doesn't take away anything. It doesn't substitute for something they ought to ordinarily do. It doesn't substitute for radio communications. It doesn't substitute for any of their equipment or their breathing apparatus. It's an addition. And if for some reason it failed, it would just mean they didn't have that increment, but they wouldn't lose any other functionality that they currently have. So they're not impaired in any way if it didn't work. The other issue is the sole source thing that people have brought up. And is there similar equipment? Robert suggested that he's looked at some of this and so forth. I have not. I've never looked at anything. I don't know if there's anything competitive out there. And that's something that's, you know, perhaps we should be looking at, but I wasn't able to answer that. But I was amazed and astonished by what I saw. And the heart of it seems to be this edge detection technology that takes an image and then figures out where the edges of it is, whether it's a structure or a person or whatever. It shows you outline that is artificial. In other words, that outline isn't visual from the eyes. It's an artifact of the calculations that are happening in the algorithms. And to be able to do this and create outlines, I thought was really quite astonishing. I mean, it seems like sure, it worked in smoke. It could work in a darkened building. It could work in a collapsed building. I mean, it just seemed like there were lots of opportunities to use this. So anyway, I was dazzled by the technology. So let me leave it at that.
All right, thank you for that, Chuck. You know, Walt, I have a question for you.
Go ahead, Director.
Actually, several. You know, are there other helmet-mounted thermal imaging devices?
Not this type of product.
Well, not, yeah, I know this is a fairly unique product, but are there other helmet-mounted thermal imaging devices?
There's different types, right? There's handheld. You can some you can wear on your jacket. You can put them on your helmet. There's in the face piece as well. So those are thermals, right? This is another type. Takes it to the next level of a full product of navigation, mapping, communication, and thermal. There's nothing like this.
Did you evaluate any other of the thermal imaging devices, the helmet-mounted devices? Or?
Yeah, correct. I actually have one, the Scott that's in my mask right now, which is a thermal, and then the handhelds, which are the Bullards, and they've evolved over time and they've gotten better. And so we've been purchasing those for the last 6 or 7 years. So yeah, so I've had a bunch of products. I've gone to all the shows. I've seen multiple different type of thermal imagers, and I've never seen anything like this.
Does NPFA evaluate and certify this equipment?
So they just basically set the bare minimum standard for the NFPA. They will set the thermal imaging standard as far as like screen size and stuff like that, but they don't have the NFPA for the standard of what this product is yet, right? So this has mapping and navigation. So there's nothing in the NFPA yet for that because they haven't seen anything like this, right? So they're sticking to the original thermal imagers that we have now. And Sam can answer this question as well. He's done a lot of research on this as well.
I would ask both of you, has the device, the see-through device, been submitted to NFPA for evaluation, or say NIST or some other national lab for evaluation and certification?
I can speak to
either
this.
one of you. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And Director McLaughlin, nice to meet you. I'm not sure if we've had the pleasure of connecting yet. And Directors Bernstein and Jones, I just want to take a second to say thank you very much for joining us the other day. It was an honor to show you what we've been working on so closely with Menlo over the years. That's a good question, Director McLaughlin, and if it's okay, I'll just speak to that very briefly. So the short answer is no. We've done an extensive amount of testing on the product and its development that related to thermal resistance and some impact testing, but by design, we have not actually submitted it through the proper National Fire Protection Agency process because we have still been in development, right? And you do that at the very end of the development cycle after the product is in its completed state. That said, the product that we are building, See-Through, is being built to conform to the relevant standards for durability, water intrusion, flammability, intrinsic safety for the NFPA, and they adhere to the various recommendations, 1700, 1801, 1802. There's a number of them that are related to products in the safety space, either thermal imaging or the self-contained breathing apparatuses that Walt was mentioning with Scott's site. One thing I will mention, and just to reiterate the point that Walt made a second ago, what we've been developing with see-through is a bit of a new animal, if you will. It is a thermal imager, of course, but it does, it does come with a number of new capabilities. And the concept of a helmet-mounted, not just thermal imager, but augmented reality application has a small little computer on it, is not something that a NFPA full standard has necessarily been created to support yet, and that's actually very normal. In fact, all of the NFPA standards or recommendations that have come out, and they are recommendations that have been set to be followed, are trailing, right? So with the guidance and experience of pioneering departments like Menlo is doing right now with the UAVs, the same thing would be true, with augmented reality thermal imaging heads-up displays in the future. But in the meantime, what we can do is follow the applicable relevant requirements for NFPA related to items that would be applicable to any technology that you would be taking into a fire. And those are, water intrusion, durability, flammability, and intrinsic safety, so it doesn't go boom. And an example of that, for instance, is with power. You would never want to take a standard lithium-ion battery into a fire because they're flammable, they can explode. And so following a similar kind of conforming to the same standards that NFPA recommends, we've chosen to equip the technology with a lithium ion phosphate battery, which does not explode, is much more stable, and the types of batteries that are used in current thermal imagers that are taken into fires today. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a background on how we're approaching see-through as we get closer to taking the product to market.
Yeah, thank you. Rob, do you have a comment?
Yeah, Jim, thank you. I'd like to know, I know being part of Klan group, when I was a federal agent, we used to have to go into smoke-filled rooms and, get certified with the breathing devices the way firefighters do. Has this been tested under real smoke or fire conditions? Like, I know we used to use like a theater smoke that we would qualify with, and we never really went into qualification or a room where different materials were burnt and things like that. Has that ever been tested, Walt or Sam, yet?
Sure, I can speak to this, Walt. And good question, Director Solano. Sure, my pleasure. So yes, the short answer is yes. It has been tested in IDLH environment, so real fire, real smoke. But of course, we've had a test program that has gone from completely inert environments to cold smoke scenarios where we've looked to get user feedback without the threat of dangerous conditions, and ultimately then into IDLH, immediate dangerous to life and health conditions, for making sure that the technology can withstand those conditions, that the thermal imaging camera, which is the exact same type of camera that is installed in the ones you use today, performs similarly to our system. And in fact, as recently as 2 weeks ago, we actually performed a live fire training at the Menlo Fire Training Protection District training site. We also have tested it in real live fire in various fire departments around the world, including Fire Brigade of London, and immediately prior to that to Boston's training tower. So there's been quite a bit of testing, over the years, and this is a product that has really been, it was conceptualized long ago and has gone through a number of different phases, as you guys have all seen, starting with the mask-mounted solutions and ultimately landing at the one that we have today for a variety of reasons, to improve the usefulness of the tech. So now it's helmet-mounted. But along the way, we have done a great deal of testing, and there will continue to be a thorough test program that's put in place until the moment that it is released for general availability.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. Jim, I have a few more if you want me to continue, or you want
Yeah,
to.
go ahead. I don't see anyone else's hand. Rob, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Sam, do you guys have a cage code and a SAM registry certification, or have you done that yet?
Yes, we have actually. And part of the reason that we've done that is because we were approached about a year and a half ago by the executive staff at Department of Homeland Security as having been recognized for creating a solution to capability gaps that have been identified by the International First Responder Resource Group. So the kind of edge detection, the indoor location tracking, the waypoint proximity detection, those are all features that directly map to major problems, not just in the US with first responder capabilities, but across the world. And so as a result, DHS Science and Technology Directorate has provided us with a fair amount of resources, both in terms of money, technical support, and business support on the transition team, because they ultimately want to see this product out in the wild. As part of that process, we've had to get a SAM number, a DUNS and cage number as well. So we have all that in place. I don't have it offhand, but I'd be happy
No, I
provide that.
I don't need it, Sam. I just
Okay.
wanted to see where you were going other than here with Menlo Park Fire. And I wanted
yeah.
if you expanded with the federal resources, and I know that you had applied for a DHS grant and you've got one, right?
Yeah, it's actually not a grant. It's a lot stronger than that. It's a government contract, and
Okay, great.
we do have a tremendous amount of support from DHS that is now evolving into a much more meaningful program. We also have now a contract with the U.S. Air Force to support the United States Air Force fire departments across the country, and that's an evolving initiative as well. And that actually got extended today, coincidentally. But yeah, again, those are all federal programs that would require the use of a SAM and cage code.
Great. And Jim, I just have one more.
Go ahead, Rob.
Walter and Sam probably both can answer this. What's the training time? Like a firefighter says, here's the helmet. What's the actual training time to be like? I know it's going to be some variations relative to conditions and all that other type of stuff. But I mean, just so a firefighter can get like basic knowledge to use the device, how long does that take, Walt and Sam?
Yeah, great question. And Walt, maybe in a second, you have some further thoughts to add. I can just give my 2 cents.
Chief Ellis is also prepared as the training chief to answer that question. He's on the call as well.
Oh, great. Okay. Todd, maybe you can help me. Todd?
Yeah, sure thing. Like, good evening, board of directors. Like any new equipment we get, we don't just put it on a rig and expect people to go try it. So initially there'd be a rollout where we do some kind of literature, some kind of training, online where they learn about the product. And then we'd have everybody where we'd go through a week long of getting the whole department to come through and show them everything. And then there's a learning curve for every new piece of equipment. So it would really be about, we use it once, everybody gets to see it. We basically make a list, make sure everybody's been introduced to it, then go circle back around to see if there's any questions or additional training we need to do. And at that point, we decide through operations whether we're going to roll it out. It also goes hand in hand with, tools and equipment if we don't have them all yet, as far as buying them and getting them in our hands. And then also, like every new piece of equipment, we go through the apparatus committee. Where are we going to put it? We change inventories. There's a lot goes into every new thing we get. But ultimately, it's about individuals getting used to where they put it on their helmet and looking for it, because you're not used to it yet. We're used to the conditions and the equipment we have right now. So if we have all the equipment, it really just takes a training cycle. It's a matter of being able to get it in the master calendar for a full week, which we plan in advance, but we make room as we need. And as soon as we go through all the training, we check everybody's boxes. We make sure everybody's comfortable with how to use the technology, make sure that they know what to do if the technology doesn't work or the equipment doesn't work. And then we basically roll it out and ask for any input from the crews as we move forward.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Jim, I just want to mention a question that I asked Walt during our strategic planning committee meeting, where I asked Walt if he trusts his life and the other firefighters with this device, and of course to save lives and to protect other fellow citizens that they'd have to respond and save. And Walt, maybe you can answer that for me again, that's how convinced you are with this piece of equipment, that you would trust your life in your fellow firefighters and the community people that you would want to save with this equipment, correct? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I just thought that was a tremendous endorsement that I received when we had our committee meeting.
Yeah, that is correct, Director. And I've also spoken to other members that have used this, and, you know, I've gotten the same feedback. So, you know, I say that with confidence.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Rob. Sam, I have another question for you. You
Please.
mentioned, selling this equipment to the Air Force. Do you know what kind of testing and acceptance program they have, or would they rely on your assurances?
Yeah, good question. So obviously selling to a federal agency is a little bit different than selling to the fire protection districts or even the municipal departments. We are most likely going to have to modify the technology to kind of be built to their spec and conform to their spec. And it's largely based on security protocols and all kinds of things related to bringing in new IP solutions to a sensitive area, right? This Air Force bases have things that, not all civilians are entitled to see. But in terms of the actual testing, it's largely handled the same way that it is in terms of the kind of ability to withstand the temperature and thermal environments, the impact resistance. It's going to be very similar to what's required for for the rest of the community. Fire's fire, and that's what we're building it to. So NFPA standards, have been in existence for a long time, and there's a lot of data that's been collected around the types of temperatures, the types of newtons that are applied to electronics as thermal cameras or other devices have been taken into fires for decades now, and we'll be following and conforming to those same standards as it relates to that. But largely the primary testing and kind of certification that will be specific to federal agencies is going to be around cybersecurity and the IT solution itself.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Jim, can I make a couple points too, just that would probably be helpful to the full board? So one of the things I think that's compelling, and I know Walt knows this, and maybe you can weigh in as well. Obviously your question is a good question, as Sam said, because in terms of refinements and functionality, I mean, the core functions are there. I think everybody's excited about that. But also, what's exciting, I know for our apparatus and equipment folks, Walt in particular, because he's been dealing with Sam, is to be able to make those last refinements, with them on the final product, and then do that in an incremental fashion so that, we're going to get what we actually want to see on the device as best as possible. So, very rarely do we get to tell the vendors exactly what we want and how we want it. So every device, in talking to Walt about thermal imaging, no one's coming to us and saying, what would make it better? What are the little features that you would like to see and so forth? That's the difference here. The PO, the open PO allows it to be incremental. We're not paying Sam all the money at one time. The budget item is to outfit every firefighter eventually. And as Walt already said, we'll be doing that in smaller increments once we get down to kind of those final devices that we're going to look to implement, but understanding that they're going to work together to make those small changes to the core device. I mean, where's the finger placement for whatever the button is that you need to push, as Director Jones even said. So, in talking to Walt about that, I know, and I'll let him speak to it. That's exciting because again, that's nothing that we typically get to do with a vendor. But, in this case, because, we had a longstanding relationship, kind of been through the infancy of this program, back again when it was in the face piece and so forth, that, we have that relationship with Quake and so forth. But the core device is a fire service changing piece of equipment. As a guy that used to crawl on the ground with not even a handheld, I can tell you that, that spatial awareness, that, that ability, the fear factor of running out of air and getting lost in a building and dying as a firefighter in a combat situation, that's scary stuff, and it can happen and it can go wrong quick. So, something like this, it's certainly in many fronts makes us, more effective, more efficient, safer. And that's what we want. We want to go in that space, do our job, get in as quickly as we can, get out as quickly as we can, not miss anything, and do it effectively. And all those things that Walt has already covered. But I'll let him talk about real quick on the development piece, because I think it is exciting to be able to do that. So Walt, if you could just talk to that.
Yeah, sure, Chief. That's a unique opportunity for us to be able to work with these guys. And we've already started talking about setting dates to where we, once we get this through, we've talked about dates about sitting down and getting on a whiteboard and talking about things that we could maybe change to it a little bit, just as far as design of how it sits on the helmet and stuff like that. But it's an exciting opportunity for all of us. And when I mention it to the members and say, hey, we're going to have a chance to R&D this product, they get super excited, and for me, that gets me excited as well. So I think it's a great opportunity for this organization and for our members to be a part of this partnership.
Virginia, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just want to thank Sam and Walt for, doing what they've done, and Chuck and Robert for kind of giving their feedback. I think this is really great. I think the community, given that we're located in the Silicon Valley, is, would be very supportive of something like this. We're, innovative and on the cutting edge. And, thank you, Harold, for, constantly looking out for strategic partnerships. I don't know if it's too early to make a motion, Jim, but I'd like to make the motion to authorize the fire chief to execute an agreement for a sole source purchase of the See-Through Navigator helmet mounted hands-free thermal imaging camera and heads-up display communication systems for enhanced firefighter vision and navigation from Quake Technologies for 42 devices, 100 helmet clips, 80 batteries, and 18 charging stations, in an amount not to exceed $210,000. And I'd also like to thank the Strategic Planning Committee for looking at this. And, Chuck, thank you for working with me on the Finance Committee as well. So
Is there a
that would
second?
be my motion.
Chuck, do you want to make the second? I'd be happy to. If not, then I'll second that, Jim.
All right. I'll just share my thoughts on this. I don't doubt that, as listening to Robert, listening to Chuck, I've watched the videos and whatnot of the device. That it's the function is desirable, would increase safety, effectiveness, and would be a great tool. My concerns revolve around approving a prototype under a sole source contract, a product that does not exist right now, present form. I asked about Air Force or even DHS. They have elaborate testing and acceptance programs where they have their technical people break the thing down on a bench and evaluate circuitry and reliability and all of those features. They don't rely on the vendor's assurances that it meets certain standards. They test it independently. There's things like the NIST lab that does this type of work. So I think before we put a piece of equipment into service, it should be subjected to rigorous testing and acceptance before we buy it. I think it should be part. I don't have any problem with the district testing the device. I think it should be tested along with other devices. so that we don't fall into, the trap of thinking that there is nothing else out there. 'Cause we won't know until we look. So I have a problem with going into this all the way, buying, this many devices, even though it's in a phased, approach. I would favor withholding a purchase decision until it has undergone rigorous testing and acceptance by, if it's the Air Force or the DHS or whomever, until it's been subjected to that kind of evaluation. I don't think we should move forward with this district-wide. Chuck, I see your hand. Chuck, you're on mute.
Thank you. I'm sorry about the mute. I wanted to ask a question of Walt to see, to potentially support what you're saying, Jim, because as you say, these units won't be available for roughly a year. And it seems that this technology could be useful right now. So I was going to ask Walt two things. One, do we have enough units that we could equip a whole engine company, that is, three firefighters, with these now until the actual production models are available? And two, could we perhaps experiment with buying 3 units that are competitive, and just to see what the difference is over the next year?
Okay, so your first question was,
Do we have enough units that available to us, or could we borrow them, or is there some way we could use 3 of the prototype units on an engine company for, say, the next 6 months, just to see how it works in practice?
so I would ask Sam, I'm pretty sure they do have enough, but I would say that for us, this opportunity and the chance to build this prototype for ourselves for the next year is something that is unique to us, and the ability to do it is, hold on, there we go. We've been demoing this type of product for almost 2.5 years already, right? So the goal is to get what we've got right now, and we're not even messing with the technology part of it. The only thing that we would mess with would be the design of the camera, the helmet mount, and the product itself, if that makes any sense, right? We're not messing with the laser, the technology, the mapping, the navigation. The only thing that we're really trying to fix with this product is how it fits on our helmet, right? How it fits on different types of helmets. So
Housing.
Well, I'm not asking though to replace anything here. I mean, the fact is that this is a proposal for phased purchasing, and these units, the production models, won't be available for close to a year. All I'm asking is for right now, in other words, for the next 6 months, could we test with one engine company 3 of those units and see what would happen in real practice, and then perhaps buy 3 other units that might be considered competitive and test them with another engine company, so that when the production models are finally available, we'd know kind of where we stood and what we liked and didn't like, or whatever. I'm just trying to see if we could perhaps satisfy Jim's concerns even while we proceed with a phased purchase of this equipment.
Jim?
Directors, if I may, may I say a few words to address the concern?
Briefly.
Sure. This is Sam, by the way. So I absolutely hear the concern, and apologies if I was not clear before, but I did want to clarify that number one, the devices, all the devices that you guys have used, experienced, tested, including the ones that you were able to experience most recently a few days ago, are advanced prototypes, and they are devices that have continued to evolve and will continue to evolve over the next few months until they go into full-scale production. before they go out to general availability, they will be tested and certified by a qualified lab. And we're happy to share the results of that if that's critical or important to you guys. I also just kind of, like to say that, this is not, we're not looking at this perhaps in the same way that a lot of standard vendors look at this. We see this as a partnership. You guys have played a very important role in the development of this technology. And I would say that you've in fact supported a lot of the feedback that's been helpful in getting it to the point that it is. So if it makes sense to not charge for items that we haven't shipped, and or to have money back guarantees or what have you, whatever makes you guys feel comfortable, we have the ultimate flexibility to be able to do that. So I wouldn't want anyone thinking that they would be getting locked into something that may not deliver on the promise that you guys have seen, and or prior to having the results of testing and certification from the labs that we will have worked through DHS with to spec out. It's certainly not our intention, and we will hold ourselves to the highest standards in terms of making sure that the product is built to the highest safety standards. And in fact, for what it's worth, there's a number of products that are out there currently being used by a number of fire departments, perhaps even your fire department, that have followed a similar protocol. For instance, the Seek handheld thermal imaging cameras, of which 1,000 were just purchased by LA County. They are not NFPA certified, although we will be building to that standard. And the same thing applies for the Scott Sight. That is not an NFPA certified camera. It happens to just be grandfathered in based on the fact that it's an accessory to a certified air pack or a self-contained breathing apparatus. But the bottom line is, I want you guys to know that we take your concerns very seriously. While we don't have units that we could leave with you because they have not been fully hardened yet for real use in that environment, we certainly would be willing and happy to be flexible with the contract such that it's done in such a way that it protects your interests and of course your crew.
Right, Robert, I saw your hand.
Yes, this hands up. Walt, Sam, our chief, could you walk me through possibly the time frame between, say for example, we get approval tonight. What is the time frame over the course of the next year? Let's take 6 months to the year, and what the goal that you want to try to, the end goal, and what do you want to try to what milestones you want to meet between now and that end goal?
Well, you want to take a stab at it? Or you want me to do it?
Yeah, Chief, I kind of get the question. I mean, that's what the R&D is about, is figuring out where we want to go. But if you want to talk to the first part of his question.
Yeah, I can do that. So Robert, in talking with Sam and where we are, and understanding that we're at budget time, we believe that within the next 6 months, and preferably sooner than that, Walt will be working with Sam on those advanced prototypes and the refinements necessary to the housing. So I think what you heard was the basic technology features are already in the device. You got to see that in person, right? So, the ability for you to look out and see shapes, have spatial awareness, the green laser feature, the navigation feature, the thermal imaging feature, the ability to transmit signal, all those are already in that device. That doesn't need to be redone. I mean, they may, put that together a little bit differently in their final model, but in the end, it's the housing. It's where are the buttons, what button does what, where do you put it, what makes the most sense. And that's what we've been talking about with Sam. I mean, that's what's great about having Walt, who's on the equipment committee, work with them on those final refinements of what makes the most sense from the firefighters' standpoint. Where do you put what? But from my perspective, within the next 3 months, we're doing that. And between 3 and 6 months, we're getting that advanced prototype. And to what you just said, that's going to be, as Walt wants to do, put on a piece of fire equipment so that we can use it in the field and still, do the refinements and so forth. But that's kind of what we were looking at. And then, up to a year, as Sam says, until they get to some level of final testing and product. So, and I think what he's also articulating is that, we're not proposing to spend all the money at one point or at one time. It's going to be incremental in that purchase process as well. That's why the open PO is, as the equipment committee feels comfortable about getting a certain number of devices, putting those in the field, testing them, then we'll start to scale up. But that ability is always there. And I see Todd jumped in here too, and he could probably speak to that as well in terms of watching the evolution and so forth of the device. Todd, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to Director Bernstein's idea about putting it on one engine company. While that does seem to make sense, the problem is logistically, because I talked about training. We could pick one engine company and say they're a busy engine company. They have a higher likelihood of maybe going to a fire. However, what we can't predict is what personnel are on that day, given overtime, vacations, training, everything else. What we also can't predict is what assignment they'll get at a fire, because they might end up being water supply. They might end up being the out team. They might end up being the RIC team. So actually getting usable data and feedback by just putting it on one engine, we really limit our chances basically of getting to use it in action. I just wanted to make that part clear.
Yeah, and just if I may, this is Sam again, just to speak to the Director Jones's question about the kind of milestones and timing. So very briefly, the timeline that we're really looking at, and that's been included in that contract, basically stated about a 9 to 12 month, kind of lead time, and the milestones were in this order. Working closely with your team to secure the final optimizations to the physical product, as Chief mentioned, hardening the devices, developing the limited availability and fabrication of the devices, and going through the certification and testing, ultimately then delivering the product to you within that 9 month to 12 month window. So there's a series of steps that would be taken, and it's along that timeline and process that we would follow. Also, just to reiterate the point, I want you guys to know this isn't a hard sale for us. In fact, if you choose not to proceed with this, we certainly would understand. We do believe that there's a tremendous opportunity here, just based on the history, the heritage of our work with Menlo, and some of the recent events that have transpired, including the call from New Haven that we received due to the line of duty death that occurred. And I think we have a chance to get out ahead of those types of incidences. But again, I realize that there's more that goes into this than that. What I will say is that if at any point after you guys did choose to proceed with an order, you decide that it's not, no longer in line with the principles or the, the keeping of the department or the desires of the department, we don't want anyone feeling locked into anything, and we would be more than happy to include in the contract that you guys would be free to go, and we can terminate that contract. We're more seeing this as an opportunity to work closely with you guys. Your team has played a meaningful role in this. We want to make sure that your guys get what they've asked for, and the best way that we can see to do that would be to work very closely with them in this final development sprint before we actually take the product to market.
Sam, is the offer you just made, is that reflected in the contract that is before us?
Yes, it is, sir.
All right. If there's no further discussion, I'll ask for the vote.
Yeah. Let's go
Yeah, Robert, go ahead.
I was going to say the thing. Yeah, let's call for the vote.
Yep.
All right. I don't know if this is important or not, but Director Crawley, if you're there, I don't see you on the screen.
I'm here.
Oh, thank you. If you could revise your motion to say that it's to approve a resolution authorizing. So it's to approve a resolution at the beginning. There's a resolution attached to this item that wasn't listed in the title. So.
Oh, okay. I got it. So
you don't have to
basically
read the whole thing again, just have it start with
that's
resolution.
Okay, that's fine. So do you want me to just make an amendment to that, just to say that the beginning of the motion should state that I'm moving to approve the resolution to authorize the fire chief to execute an agreement. Perfect.
Perfect. And
Thank
Director
you.
Jones, can you second that?
I'll second that.
Thank you so much. And I'll continue with the vote. Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye. All right, very good.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, directors. Thank you, Sam.
Walt,
Okay, thank you.
Chief.
Harold, I
Thank
think,
you, directors.
Yeah,
Thank you,
well, you can
Sam.
go back in service now. We'll take Randy out of service for the next one.
Yes,
Thank you,
sir.
Walt.
Thank you,
Thanks, Walt.
Virginia.
all right, Harold, I think you want to take item 14 next.
Yeah.
Thank
item
you all.
number
This is
14.
Sam.
Yes.
I'll go
thank you,
ahead. I'll go
Sam.
ahead and leave you, but thank you very much. I appreciate your time and very excited to continue collaborating with the department.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, Sam.
Good night.
Good night.
So directors, item 14, if we can get Randy Kelly on board, then that'll be helpful to move this item forward.
Good evening, directors. I'm just bringing up my my PowerPoint.
So, hey, Randy, while you're doing that, let me kind of tee this up again. One of the things that came out last month, it was actually first in the written questions. You approved 3 engine companies last month, and we appreciate that. And obviously the month before that, the Tiller ladder truck. But, again, giving Director Bernstein credit for both the questions and then the follow-up discussion that happened during the meeting, again, brought to the Strategic Planning Committee was the opportunity to think differently, which, that's pretty interesting, that we're kind of having these dialogue or conversations with the board. Again, we're so siloed into that we cycle apparatus and they become old and we use them in a reserve status, and that we kind of have a way of doing business that we've been doing for the 40 years I've been here. In fact, it's always been a struggle sometimes to even get apparatus or new equipment. So in this particular case, what Chuck brought up, which is in the report, was why not buy, 1, if not 2, if not 3 more pieces of equipment and have the fleet be completely replaced to some extent, which made a lot of sense. Again, I've been here when we bought demonstrator rigs and glued 2 different types of equipment together. So it's a little bit of a leap to try and think the way that we're doing here, but I think it's kind of a good leap because we do have, as you can see, a reserve that has enough money to accomplish all of this. And if you look at the numbers that Pierce gave us, we do enjoy a significant reduction in the overall cost if we were to do this. And then equally, if you look at steel prices, production, timing, I don't know if any of you tried to buy a used car. I just did. Or if anybody's ever has been out recently to buy lumber, which I'm trying to still find for fence board. Things are a little crazy right now when it comes to supply and production. So I think there's a real opportunity here, as Director Bernstein alluded to in the meeting and also brought up in his questions, and then actually selling our older, not quite really old reserves at a greater savings to the district, or at least return on investment. And then Randy will get into all the standardized features, that we've talked about before, but it made a whole lot of sense. And that's why we're back tonight, because again, I think Director Bernstein raised some really interesting points. And after kind of deliberating those and going to the Strategic Planning Committee, who also thought that these were good and relevant, should be brought to the full board, I'll let Randy take it from there.
Once again, good evening, directors. Randy Kelly. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can.
Okay. So I'm here to discuss tonight our recommendation to purchase 3 additional engine companies so that we have a healthy fleet of frontline and reserve engines. We've talked about this over the last couple of months. Last month, we purchased the three engines to replace engine 1, engine 77, engine 3. Tonight, we're discussing changing the way we replace apparatus and use for reserve apparatus. And the goals of this is to improve our operations, maintenance, financial. Well, the reason we feel this makes sense is from a perspective of operations, maintenance, financial consideration, and also a big thing is that it extends our replacement cycles. So touching on operations, what this will do is this will give us a frontline reserve fleet that is identical. We're essentially using the same blueprint to build this next, what would be 6 engines that we've used to be the last 4. We've made some small changes within it just to, based on user feedback. Most of it is more on the underside of the fire engine and just kind of improving essentially the infrastructure of the fire engine to extend the life of it, improve the reliability of it. That ties into the, on the operations part. It also is, by doing this will give us a frontline fleet. It'll give us a reserve fleet. Everything's identical. So when we need to go send engines out of county, or if we have a surge in activity, we have to place extra fire engines in service to meet the need, that all the engines will be identical. We won't have to get reacquainted with what we have. We'll have 3 fully stocked turnkey ready to go fire engines that match the other 7 frontline engines. What that does, that simplifies our training, that brings consistency to operations, and we believe this is beneficial. Touching on the maintenance part, right now our mechanics have essentially 4 series of Pierce engines that they have to maintain based on purchasing through our staggered apparatus replacement plan. By making a one-time purchase and going to replacing the balance of the fleet, what that does for our fleet services is now we have 1 chassis, 1 platform that all of our fire engines, our pumpers, as well as our ladder trucks and our heavy rescue are all built on that same chassis with the same componentry on the same platform. So now that they only need to support 1 type of platform going forward. In doing that, that reduces the amount of training that they need, the amount of specific tools they need for different series and different brands of fire engines. And it also reduces the parts inventory and simplifies sourcing parts. So currently we essentially is that we go from having a source for 4 different series of pumpers down to 1. Additionally, into doing that is because we'll have healthy reserve engines with low mileage. What that gives us that will reduce the burden on our mechanics. We only have 2, and then we have a helper, but they have a huge workload when you consider all of the fire apparatus as well as USAR and then the support vehicles. So this kind of gives them a chance to get ahead of our apparatus, institute preventative maintenance cycles rather than their current practices. What happens is that they triage until there's enough things or they have enough time in the schedule or there's a critical failure of a piece of apparatus that they have to take it out. So that's touching the maintenance part of it. The reset, tying into that, the replacement cycles, even though we're a little out of order here, by having a fleet that's all relatively the same age, that gives us the opportunity and is identical. What that allows us to do using our tracking software for apparatus is that also allows us to look at our engine fleet and make more strategic moves to where we start rotating our apparatus so that when we have engines with higher engine hours, higher mileage, and more wear than some of the other ones, periodically we're able to rotate those engines, the higher use engines, to slower stations or into reserve apparatus status, and run up the miles and the hours on the other ones. So essentially it's just extending the wear more evenly across the fleet. And in doing that, that extends the life of it, of the apparatus. This isn't something that we've created. This is used in many municipalities throughout the United States, and not just in fire apparatus. This is used in public works. I imagine, I'm not that familiar with the police, law enforcement side of things, but I imagine that law enforcement does this. And I know private industry, they do this where they'll put vehicles off to the side and try and reduce their use, because by extending the wear of the whole fleet, they can do a larger one-time replacement in the future and get greater discounts. And then they're also retool their maintenance yards and fleets or mechanics towards whatever having a new piece of equipment. So that's touching on the replacement cycles. Another thing to add with that is with the replacement cycles and extending the wear, two cities to our south, Mountain View and Palo Alto, they've standardized their fleet and they rotate. Mountain View is they're in their second. This is the second time they've done it, and they're getting ready to do it a third time. And I believe on their first cycle of Seagraves, they extended the life of the fleet they estimated by 5 years. And there's no reason to assume that we wouldn't get that benefit, and that might push our whole fleet out for another 12 to 15 years. You know, so that's the replacement cycles. The last part I'll touch on before we hit questions is the financial piece. By purchasing 6 instead of 3, we're going to get a greater discount. They asked me not to go in. I'm not sure I have the numbers right, but we're going to see probably a discount that's close to 7 or 8% more so than if we were just buying a single unit and not going through the HGAC process. So there's a significant savings there, and that has to do with the fact that we would be tagging on 3 more engines to the existing order that you approved last month. Also on the cost recovery, there's a cost recovery piece to this because we would be selling off our existing reserve fleet and the 3 newer engines that we would be rotating. That those monies recovered, the newer engines that we would be selling off, there's going to be a greater value for those than there would be for the older ones. And just in general, the way we surplus our engines now, where we run them for 10 to 15 years, sometimes more. We have an engine that's being used that's a 2002 now, so it's 19 years old. There's going to be we would be able to sell all those off because we would have the frontline engines, the 3 extra reserve pieces that we're maintaining. And by doing that, we can assume that there would be some lower maintenance costs. We're buying the fire engines now at 2021 prices, which when you factor in that fire engines go up, Pierce has been on average 3% per year, but the industry fluctuates from anywhere from 2 to 10. And that has nothing to do with the cost of metal that Chief Chappell touched on. So we're able to lock in a price now versus every year from now, we're going to be paying 2 to 5% more for essentially the same fire engine. So when you look at that, the benefit to selling off the old fleet now and making the one-time purchase, which locks us in for fire engines for the next decade or so, I think that puts us in a good spot, and it makes sense financially. Last thing I'll touch on or 2 more things I'll touch on. One is the risks. And the risk, there's a perceived risk. Director Bernstein touched on it last time. The biggest risk to us in our current replacement plan is that when emissions laws and fuel technologies change, if we get kind of caught in the middle of that and we end up with a fleet that's more mixed than we have now, and now we have engines that look more dissimilar and are outfitted in a dissimilar way, because that impacts our operations, our training, and our maintenance division negatively. So by doing that, that's kind of, as I said, locks us in for the next 10 years and gives us stability. The other risk that the fear is the fear of missed innovation. But in my experience, what I've seen the biggest change in fire engines, aside from emissions and the greater use of technology and for diagnostic software, are actually things that we add on to the fire engines, which are our radios, our thermal imaging, or quake technology, things like that. The use of iPads, pre-planning software, and these are all things that can be changed and will continue to evolve faster than the apparatus. So The risks there, the only other one that I mentioned at the strategic planning meeting, our greatest risk to having a stable and reliable fleet would be if we got a bad load of fuel right now. But because we have 4 different fueling locations within the district, I'm not really worried about us getting 4 bad loads of fuel at the same time and taking out our fleet. So the worst case scenario is that 1 to 2 engines end up with bad fuel, or there's a problem. They would be taken out of service, flushed, and we would use the reserve engines during that time. The last thing I wanted to touch on is health and safety. One of the things that, as we all know, is that firefighters get taken out. 2 of the most dangerous things to firefighters are what we breathe and driving. We've taken a lot of steps to improve, make our fire engines safer. We have the highest emission standards. Our fire engines meet the highest emission standards in the diesel industry. We have good new motors. When you put these next to our older engines, even as recently as the 2007s, it's night and day. It's hard to detect the exhaust in the new engines, and you can't see the exhaust versus the old engine smoke. And all that smoke goes out. It's the exhaust pipes are right next to the most commonly used compartment on the fire engine, the medical compartment. So when the firefighter steps off, he's walking right into a face full of diesel. From time to time, they'll set off our CO alarms that are carried on our EMS gear. And when you look at the new engines, they're not doing that. It's also, we've changed some of our practices. We've tried to move things around, but they're just much cleaner. And that helps to mitigate some of the risks, as well as some of the features we put inside the fire engines and changes like moving the PPE, just to try and reduce the risk and exposure to carcinogens and other toxicants to the firefighters every day. The other thing that we'll be investing in on the next 3 engines and hopefully 6 is we're installing 360 cameras, which there'll essentially be a camera on every side of the fire engine, and through the computer it stitches together a 360 overhead view of the fire engine, so that we have greater situational awareness around us when we're operating the vehicle, which makes it safer for the operator as well as the firefighter, as well as the citizens that we come across. We're also looking at some collision avoidance early detection software that's available, and as well as the things that we've touched on in the past about just the basic structure of how the fire engines are designed to reduce the slips, trips, and falls, and other things like that. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up with one last thing. I want you to know that this recommendation has been endorsed by the training division as well as the labor group, and I think it's a good move going forward. I think it'll provide a lot of stability for operations, training, and improve the overall safety and well-being of our firefighters in the community we serve. With
Hey,
that,
Jim.
Yeah, thank you, Randy.
Hey, Jim, I got 2 things. I think Randy did a fantastic job. I have 2 things that I wouldn't say that you left out, but just to take into consideration, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Chief.
So one of the things that if you note on the report, and I certainly noted it, and I think others have too, we used to rarely have strike team deployments. And so, taking your oldest piece of equipment and allowing that to go out of county was, I think in some ways reasonable, because, you want to keep your front line, right? Well, we're doing that a lot more often. And to be quite honest with you, the level of firefighting and the risk to our personnel is pretty significant. In fact, in many cases, the most significant things they may do in their entire career. So there's been a whole rethinking of, the quality of the apparatus that we're sending out. Nobody wants to have a piece of equipment that breaks down, or is the slowest piece of equipment going to Southern California, as example, holding everybody back and delaying a strike team, let alone, performance-wise on an incident, it's going to underperform. So, having newer reserves allows them to be driving, some of the latest equipment and with better safety features and performance factors, so that you reduce that failure factor in critical situations, to as best as you can to zero, which again is a whole rethinking of what we used to do. We wouldn't do that today, right? So the other part of this too, I want you to know, I've been spending a lot of time on the phone with Golden State, who's been talking to Pierce. And when Randy talks about the discounting, I just want you guys to know that, we've had a lot of meaningful discussions about what happened with the Quint, which I don't blame Golden State for. I blame Pierce in the way that it was built. And I'm not trying to, raise the red herring, but, I was never very happy about the resolution of that and how it was handled, mostly on Pierce's side. So part of what you're seeing in the pricing is reflective, at least I wanted you to know, of those discussions about making things right, going backwards to some extent, because, we have an opportunity here, obviously with purchasing power, to get a greater level of discount and so forth. So, just so everybody knows, those things have been brought up. The pricing, I think, accordingly has been ratcheted by Pierce, as Randy said, more than what we could see through the third-party vendor. And I give them credit for that because they're equally trying to accommodate correcting a wrong and making things right for us going forward so that we feel good about Pierce Manufacturing as well. That was an anomaly, but it was a painful anomaly, as many know. So, again, that's reflective in these pricings that you see here, as well as not just the discount, but discount for past grievance, I guess, if you will. So that's my 2 points.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Jim?
Rob?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the fire chief to award a contract to Golden State Fire Apparatus for the purchase of 3 additional 2021 Pierce Arrow XT 1500 GPM pumpers in the amount not to exceed $2,130,000.
I'll second that.
Right. Any discussion?
I have just one question for Randy and the chief, if I
Robert?
may. Was it my understanding, Chief and Randy, that you said that the discount will be on the current purchase order, or are you saying that it would include the last purchase order too as well?
Yes, all six units would be discounted. So the 3 that you previously authorized and the 3 that you're authorizing now, because we've been in, what you don't know is we've been in meaningful discussions with them about the agreement, factors in the agreement, warranty, and everything. And of course, the opportunity to buy 3 more just added to that discussion. So it's been fruitful. It's a lot more fruitful to have your powering or your purchasing power and authority, and then trying to work some of those better deals, so to speak.
So if I'm correct, the last order is around 2 million, right? Something like that?
Correct.
And this is another 2, I would say about 4, almost 4.1, and you said it's at 7%. That's over $288,000 worth of savings, approximately. That's
Yeah.
I think it's a good
there's
opportunity.
There's an attachment that goes into the savings.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
yeah, I'm ready to vote.
Chuck?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this. At the risk of losing my reputation as sort of a Scrooge on this board, I want to reiterate that my question was simply a question, a good faith question. In other words, it wasn't necessarily an endorsement at that time. And the idea of purchasing all at one time, it has no relation whatsoever to me or any expertise I have. It actually came, and I'm blanking on his name. There was a captain who presented along with you, Randy. Who was the captain? Remind me of his name.
Jeff, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, Captain Jeff Hendricks.
Yep.
Jeff Hendricks, exactly. He's the one that mentioned the idea of having more purchasing power. And it got me to thinking that realistically, and by the way, I appreciate if in fact Pierce is trying to do the right thing, I appreciate that. I mean, seems to me what they should do. And I'm glad they're doing it. I want to acknowledge that they're doing it, but I also think it's what good business people do. But if we realistically wanted to ever consider different vendors or different kinds of equipment or whatever, it seems like we have to do it all at one time, because once we have a commitment to certain kinds of engines or certain kinds of, I'm talking about certain kinds of fire engines or certain kinds of motors, then it seems like the next thing we buy has to fit that. And it's very hard to break the mold. This allows us to, as Randy eloquently said, I mean, we standardize training, we standardize some inventory of parts, we standardize the training of the mechanics. There's a whole bunch of stuff that happens. And I think I really got very interested in this idea of true fleet management, similar to what the rental car companies do, where they know when the right time to sell their inventory is, they know what kind of equipment to do to maintain it. And they like us, I mean, obviously much more in numbers, but they have mechanics who need to be trained and so forth. So I think there is some expertise in this whole field. And I hope when it comes to the disposal of old equipment that we set out to take advantage of some of this expertise, perhaps hire a consultant who can give us some pointers on when the optimal time to sell old equipment is, when we'd realize the most value and so forth. And I just have one other point that I wanted to make, and that is that being able to do this is dependent on the financial discipline that we've had the past 3 or 4 years of essentially depreciating equipment and using depreciation as the means of building up a fund, a replacement fund. And we've had the discipline. We should definitely continue it, where each year, if the stuff lasts 10 years, then you take 1/10 of the value and you put it into a pot, which is the replacement pot. And after 10 years, you've essentially replaced the equipment. And that's what we should continue to be doing, because that allows this to happen. So I've actually, while I wasn't that way when I was asking the questions, I've actually come around to thinking that this is a very smart long-term decision for us. I had only one question though that I did want to ask either Todd or Randy or someone. I noticed that in the reserve, maybe the terminology isn't right, but in the reserve fleet, there is an engine called the training engine. And it didn't quite seem to make sense to me that we would take some of the oldest, or one of the oldest pieces of equipment and use that to train new firefighters when in fact they're going to be using the newest stuff.
Director, I can speak to that.
Thank you.
That engine is also, I believe, known as engine 103. And for training, it's just another, it's just terminology. Because it's housed here at Station 1 and it's use for recruit training. We've set up the compartmentation so that it matches the other older engines. And it's a higher mileage engine. So that's why it stays here. And it's more just so when we're talking about the different engines, we're more familiar with the terminology of the training engine versus the wildland engine versus the reserves. So it's more so for what we know, what we're talking about to each other than it is. But as far as the training, that engine is primarily used in the drill yard here for the new firefighters to pull hose off of. And yeah, it doesn't get pressed into service very often.
So what it does is it's just a pump and hose pretty much, as Randy said, but it allows the engine that they're on, their first line, to stay intact. So if we had to get that crew back in service for an emergency, their piece of equipment would be fully intact. There are times on multi-company drills where they're using their own apparatus, but as Randy said, for probationary personnel and so forth, it makes sense to have something that doesn't compromise the in-service capability of the engine. That way that readiness is always there, and that helps us on coverage and so forth.
A little more to that, Director. With the new people, it is primarily for the brand new people. They're learning how to pull hose and how to reload our hose on the engines, which is the same on all the fire engines. When it comes to driver training, we have two very distinct types of engines. So standardizing the fleet will help a lot in that sense, because we have what's called pressure governor on all the older rigs, which are all the reserve apparatus and 3 current frontline apparatus. And then we have a pressure governor, which is operated in a totally different way. So currently I have to have 2 engines come in whenever we do a engineer test, because we need to make sure they're trained on both and they know how to operate both. So we do bring in other engines that are set up. We basically have to bring in and introduce 2 different kinds of engines when we do training, so that we can show them both kinds that we have in service, the old style and the new style.
Director, when you transfer that to the operational side, when you go work, our newer members who have less experience, they get moved around the district a lot more to fill in for staffing. And the new guys they don't have the experience that the senior engineers do. And they might end up having to work on different types of pumps throughout their shift. And when you put that into play at an emergency incident, it adds a level of complexity and stress to their jobs that they don't need. So that's one of the things where it's beneficial on the training side as well as the operations side, is that all of our engines will be standardized with pressure governors, and we'll be moving away from the throttles and relief valve model that we used to have.
All right, I think we have a motion and a second. I think if there's nothing else, I'll call the vote.
Director McLaughlin, can you ask for public comment?
Is there any public comment?
If anybody wishes to provide a public comment, please raise your hand or hit *9 if you called in. Seeing none, I'll do the roll call. Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Jones? I'll come back to Director Jones. Director Crawley?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director McLaughlin?
Aye.
And Director Jones?
Aye,
Thank
sorry.
you.
Thanks, directors.
All right.
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks a lot.
Directors,
Randy.
thank you very
See you.
much.
Yeah, thank you, Randy.
Take care.
All right, back to our regular agenda.
What?
We really,
We're back to the chief's report, if that's helpful.
Thank you, Michelle.
it is, thank you so much. As usual, you keeping me on track.
Jim,
Yes,
can we take Virginia's suggestion and do the consent calendar?
I think it'd be a
Thank
great
you,
idea.
Rob.
You're welcome.
Great
And
idea.
dispense with the business that we know we're gonna, dispense with right now, right?
True, very true.
Does anyone want
Okay.
to take anything off the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
All right. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Michelle, would you call the vote?
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director McLaughlin?
All right, you're up, Chief.
Hey, Jim, would you like to do a public hearing first in case there is anybody? We don't have anybody that we think is waiting for that, but in case there is, you want to go to the public hearing first?
Of course, I'm completely out of order now.
That's item number 3.
All right, very good.
And John Johnson's ready to speak to it, or Marlon, whoever's who's on the line tonight.
Michelle, I know you briefed me on this earlier, the proper order. Perhaps you could help me here.
So at this point, we're conducting a public hearing on the notice to destroy weeds, declaring weeds to be a public nuisance. And at this time, Director McLaughlin, you would want to open the public hearing and you'll ask for public comment. And if hearing none, then you would immediately close public hearing.
Okay, I'm opening the public hearing. Is there any public comment on this issue?
And if anybody has any public comments regarding the hearing on the notice to destroy weeds, now is your opportunity. You just need to hit *9 if you called in or raise your hand. if you entered through the link. And I see none. So then we would continue on to our agenda item number 4.
Okay, so I'm closing the hearing.
Oh, yes, thank you. See, you're catching me. And now we close the public hearing.
All right, so that concludes our business on that item.
Well, we're going to go to, we got to now approve the resolution authorizing the fire chief. It's number 4 on the screen.
All right. Chief, do you want John Johnston to tee this up? Or-
Yeah, John or Marlon, whoever's available
Yeah.
tonight.
So basically before you, last month, we presented to you our annual declaration of weeds as being a hazard. And upon that approval, we have sent out 2 letters certified to all of the property owners that we have designated. And obviously with this public hearing, any of those property owners have the ability to object or make any claims, of which we have none, and I have not received any in our office during this time. And so with that, we will allow all the property owners until June 1st to be able to abate their properties. And on June 1st, we will go out and perform another visual assessment of all of those properties to see if they have in fact abated them. If they have not, then we will put together a portfolio and utilize a contractor that we have. And through a resolution that is before you, this would allow us to then go onto those properties and abate and remove that hazard within the district.
All right, Virginia?
Jim, I'll make a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the fire chief to undertake the removal of weeds and abatement of public nuisances following our public hearing on objections and protests tonight.
I second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, Michelle, could you call the vote?
Yes, and seeing no further public comment, Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye. All right.
Thank you very much.
And now we're back to the chief's report,
Now we're
hopefully.
back. You're up, Chief.
Yeah, I'll try and make it quick. I mean, if you look through the report, we are working with the town of Atherton on the MA graduation event that's coming up. In the city of East Palo Alto, we are working with the city, specifically the police department, on concerns regarding the 4th of July and have some work that we're ongoing with them. We learned, I think, a little bit from last year based upon how out of control it got early on, that we needed to jump on it earlier. I know the fire marshal's well aware of what's going on, and they're working well with the police department there. In Menlo Park, we are discussing with the city the Station 77 property, the well potential at Station 1, the development of Station 1. Also talking to them about emergency management and vaccinations to some extent, although we've kind of moved off that a little bit. The new police chief is in place now, and I'll be meeting with him shortly. At the county level, and if you go to the COVID report, you can see we're starting to wind down to some extent, and we have been focused with them. I just sent Director McLaughlin kind of a preamble to a meeting that we have on Thursday with the county regarding vaccinations and the pilot program that we've been involved with. I put down here we had 7 people who've been vaccinated through the homebound program. It's actually 5, but with 1 more that signed up. It is a little disappointing in terms of why we're at that position, but that's part of Thursday's meeting without, getting into too much detail. Part of it was just old information. And I think this ability of the county wanting to be the ones that are doing the outreach versus us just doing it to the community and letting people come to us. So we're hopeful that on Thursday we can broaden our scope there a little bit and then be able to be more effective on homebound vaccinations for anybody that would want that. We'll see if that's going to work. Station 4, end of the month, all the concrete should be poured on the shear walls. Everything you see, kind of see the skeleton being erected for the shear walls and the pours that are going to be in place for the bones of the station. once that occurs, then we'll start to see, you know, the steel start to come in to build the framing and so forth for the firehouse. That'll be exciting. We talked about the Pierce purchases, so that's done. Emergency preparedness CERT support request, based upon a request from Director Crawley. I put these in the report. Obviously, you know, I know Director Bernstein asked a question about budget, and you can see that one of the things besides the consultant's report that we would feather this all into, but equally, I think for the board is, and for the committee, there still isn't a mechanism to distribute funds out of direct support. So, you know, that's something I think that should be addressed. Whether you choose to do it in the short term or the long term would be up to the board. Stanford Weekend Acres, we're working with them on the fire season issues. Specifically, you know, they were asking about Zone Haven. Red Cross, and again, to Director Bernstein's questions about the Red Cross. We haven't entered into an agreement with them because we couldn't do that with the board support. But there is preliminary discussions about how to support them going forward, and then what a joint relationship with the Red Cross would look like, which I think is a pretty cool and productive discussion because we serve essentially the same, some of the same people. They certainly have a presence at fires. They certainly are into public education. And I think we have a lot of parallel interests in terms of how we can help people. So, you know, that'll more than likely come before the board this next month as we've kind of gone through some of the preliminary discussions with them on a full-blown proposal. Harvest is the property owner behind our special operations warehouse. Again, we wouldn't do anything without the approval of the board, to Director Bernstein's questions, but we have been talking with them because they want an easement to their property for utilities and so forth. So we've given them some information to see if there's a potential cost savings to the district to do different things if they were to do it and pay for it. I give you a list of the different RFPs. I apologize to Francine. We had the class and comp. It is ongoing. We'll have a better report for you this next month, but there's been a lot of interviews and so forth. I didn't unfortunately put her information in here, but there is a lot going on there. We did get an auditor. I think Director Bernstein had a question related to that Kathy was able to answer, or Long was able to answer, or both of them. Emergency preparedness, we're working on that. Staff is working with the vendor now on that. Financial advisor, I think you know that's ongoing, and the bond issue, and then the management audit or RFP. Manny has just finished up the RFP, so I got to review it. I was hoping to do it today, just ran out of time, but it's there. We'll do that review. We've identified 4 to 5 vendors at least that are interested, and we'll be sending that out shortly. The Quake see-through we discussed tonight. LGSI, the Stanford University program, is ongoing again, but will be remote this year. Instead of 1 week, it'll be every week, I think 1 day, which is kind of unfortunate. And then board meetings and so forth. Work with the 2 directors on putting together the agenda for tonight. And then also for next month, we have Skydio. Skydio is that drone vendor, mostly for the housing, which is proposed for Fire Station 4. And then equally for a fire apparatus in the future, and potentially, you know, things like light stands or posts that we can autonomously launch drones in advance of an incident, so we have eyes in the sky. And I just wanted to finish out and say, you know, we didn't really get into with the Quake see-through, you know, some of our capability with our UAS program, which is fairly advanced. I just received a request from LA City. They want to mimic our van that we currently have that we use for our drone program, which has been getting a lot of work recently for different events and so forth, including incidents here in the district. We'll hopefully have a presentation for you this next time on some of its capability, but we've got some great footage of the fire up on Sneckner and how it was able through thermal imaging during the day to see exactly where the fire was in the roof, record where the firefighters were. And, you know, I think what you'll see is, you know, at some point here, melding all this technology together is going to give us incredible situational awareness for the firefighter, for the incident commander, to have the ability to see from the outside looking down and also from the inside, what the firefighters are doing, and have them be able to do some of that as well. So that'll make us, I think, a lot more effective and certainly a lot safer, and paint a bigger picture where, you know, we don't hopefully run into too many surprises, but it can still happen. So Skydio is a part of that, but it's certainly not the whole thing. So that'll come this next month as well. And like I said, we've been working with them as well for a while specifically on kind of a drone housing unit that can be opened up and then autonomously launch a piece of equipment that way. So that's my report. Happy to answer any questions about it.
Virginia?
Yes, thank you, Jim. Harold, thanks for your report. I just had a couple of questions. One is regarding the fireworks situation in East Palo Alto. Do you know how many fires, if any, that have been caused by fireworks in like the last year or so? I know that last year during the pandemic, I think Mayor Regina Wallace-Jones at the time and I, we visited the drone thing. Remember that you were there too? We were, I think at IKEA, right in East Palo Alto.
Yeah.
But then they didn't use our help for identification of fire areas where fireworks were happening. But you know, I think that there were some problems. I don't remember exactly, but do you have any idea how many fires were caused by fireworks in East Palo Alto, if any?
Yeah, I don't have that number. I don't know if John is still on the line and he's able to give that information to you, but I can assure you that this year we've started a lot earlier. And yeah, I think we're much more in alignment with East Palo Alto Police Department regarding, you know, different things that we need to do together. But it sounds like John was about ready to answer, so he is there. John, if you want to speak.
Yeah, I don't have the direct number, but I do know that we had at least 3 grass fires that were due to fireworks, of which we ended up finding the people that caused that. We ended up being able to talk to the families and deal with that. But that was in East Palo Alto. But we also had a house fire in Menlo Park, in East Menlo Park, that was caused from fireworks. So that was all just from last year.
In 2020, because I think that there have been complaints about fireworks happening now. Even I'm just reading things on Nextdoor, and I was getting inquiries from people in different parts of the district.
Yep. So we need to encourage people to call the local police department and to actually, give locations. If people don't give locations, then they can't catch it. But the law enforcement is the one responsible for enforcement. And there are, anonymous tip lines, but we do need addresses. Otherwise, just saying that they don't like hearing the noise, it's very difficult to chase that down.
Thank you. And just one more question, Jim, for Harold. Harold, for the Red Cross partnership, are we working with the Silicon Valley chapter? I used to be on their board, or with ARCBA, or both, or how is that structured?
Yeah, interestingly enough, it's mostly for San Mateo County, as you know, but equally we've had some of the members from the broader region that are in Santa Clara County. And next month we should have everything ready for a proposal and report to the board. I mean, I was impressed. We met with them. There was like 7 people from the Red Cross that came down. They're very interested, and like I said, I think there's a lot of mission alignment here. They've been very good with us on fires. And one of the things that you see in there is this whole response out to fires and a fire support level that we haven't had since the fire buffs were around. They have over 200 some odd members. So we've been having some good discussions about, how we could work better together. But I got to give them credit. I mean, every fire that we've had where we've called them out, which have been a few, they've been out 3 or 4 times in the recent months. They've been right there, and they're able to provide support for, our residents that are having, a terrible moment in their life. And they appreciate, the way in which the incident commanders are very responsive, allow them in, get them in there with the family so they can start their work. And that's been a good partnership, but let alone, as Ryan's talking, as we're opening up, being able to deliver classes and so forth at Station 1. And just, again, there's a lot of alignment between mission to serve the community. So I'm pretty jazzed about what the dialogue's been so far. I think you guys will like it as well.
I'm just hoping that this will stick, Harold, because, we've had a history of It's
Yeah,
not
they rented a space
picking.
and never were there, but, you know, I mean, I think it's different this time. I mean, I really do, not to go long, because I know we got a long meeting.
Yeah,
But, you know,
no,
it's sad to see what's going on with the Red Cross for the
Mhm.
good work that they do and the lack of support and kind of the consolidation they've had to go through because of funding. You know, they do a great job, and they, you know, they attract good people who want to volunteer and work for them to help other people. I mean, like I said, I think it would be a good marriage, but I'll leave that up to you guys as the board. I mean, every conversation we've had so far has been, I think it's been, we're of similar mind and similar purpose. And I think that's, you know, that's a good fit.
Thank you.
Harold, on this issue, will there be something for the EPREP and strategic planning committees to review before our next meeting?
Yeah, EPREP, we'll put it to EPREP for sure.
Well, I would ask, I think you should go for strat planning as well, if it involves
Okay.
facility use.
Yeah, we could certainly do that because there is a facility request in there that they have. So,
Yeah, I would ask you to go to them as well.
I mean, it's not an immediate request, but I mean, and you heard, I mean, space is a premium because we're still in COVID, but we know that they're looking for space and we're trying to accommodate that as well.
It's a good suggestion, Jim. So that'll go on the EPREP committee agenda.
Well, it sounds like both. So we'll put it on both and do that
Yeah.
split. One is facility, one is more alignment and purpose. And we can certainly parse that out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any
Question?
other questions, Robert?
Yes, Chief, along similar lines about the Red Cross, I noticed that they have, you indicated that they have also expressed that they have the, I guess they have the ability to support the USAR mobilization. Could you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, one of the things that we asked them about is, you know, because they have such a big list of folks, is would they be interested if the team had a deployment to come in and do that support? Meaning, you know, checking people in, issuing gear, you know, even people that can do something as simple as a blood pressure, you know, a pulse, things like that. You know, we use our own administrative personnel, but sometimes, you know, during deployment, if it's on a weekend or a holiday, it's hard to get everybody to come in. Some people live far away.
Yeah.
So, you know, that seemed to be another one of those natural fits that
Yeah.
was a backup possibility. We weren't trying to say we need everybody right away because there'd be some training that would have to occur and, you know, they'd have to volunteer to want to be able to do that. But it seemed like a good fit of yet another part of, you know, a discussion that is a possibility of how we can work together.
Yeah, I think it's great if we can wrap that up. That would be an ideal situation.
Yeah, no, I agree.
All right, any other questions for the chief?
Oh, regarding the East Palo Alto, I will talk about that.
Oh, thank
in
you.
the-
I
in the
did
liaison
not bring
report.
that up. Right.
That's
So
okay.
I put down, well, I didn't say, I said, we're looking at a date. I don't know if you're going to say the date or not, but
Yeah, I got some more information.
Okay.
I'll wait for that
right.
liaison report.
just remember that the 9th, well, no, the 10th is a board packet night. So that's a Thursday. That's the bad night. So,
Okay,
so, you know,
all right.
Michelle's listening right now. So.
Let's do it on the 9th. Yeah, okay, no.
Michelle, could you update the agenda on the screen?
Oh, I have our next item is number 12.
Okay,
Can you see that I've updated removing?
I do. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
But before we go to the next item, we do, I believe, have a public comment on the chief's report.
All right.
So give me one moment.
Good evening, directors. This is Lynn Bramlett, and thank you, Michelle, for noticing. I wanted to add some context to the numbers for MPC Ready listed in the chief's report. The numbers without the context could give a mistaken impression that we submitted only numbers and a very large sum of numbers. So first, our organization, along with the others, are asked to submit support requests at the OEM program meetings, and there have been various dollar amounts talked about, I mean, in general. So in good faith, we submitted these numbers as part of a thoughtful 7-page proposal to the OEM program. And I note that we have not yet gotten a response to any of it. And the idea is took a lot of careful thought. We researched best practices, we collected input, we spent additional hours writing a proposal that included context, organizational context, and specific details for each budget item. So a number of volunteers have looked at that once giving input and said it really is a blueprint for what really would advance preparedness in our area. And these are ideas too that we could work on in partnership with our local government. So we also included our assurances of financial safeguards in the form of receipts, quarterly reports, and a yearly comprehensive report as to how the funds were spent and what the funding achieved in terms of specific and tangible goals. We also stressed that if the fire district decided to support our request in full or in part, we would supply more details, such as for the grant program. This is modeled on the one in Los Altos, and Palo Alto has done one too. So we would work with the district to adjust as necessary any request. And we stressed throughout our goal of collaboration, and that these ideas, even if a few were worked on, could be worked on in a collaborative way to help our community be more prepared. So I realize there is some uncertainty regarding the outcome of the study of the OEM program. You might be inclined to wait before doing more. If that's your position, I respectfully ask that you reconsider, not that the ideas have to be implemented in full or in part by MPC Ready and our volunteers, but these are good ideas for the community. So I just wanted to give that context, and even if the answer is no, we would have liked to have gotten a response, and I would be pleased to give any more details about it at an upcoming, appropriate meeting. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Bramlett. All right, that brings us to item 12, review and consider the fiscal year 2021-22 proposed budget and FTE staffing level. So Chief, is that Kathy's to tee up?
Yes, sir, that's correct. I believe Kathy and Long are prepared to do a presentation for you, or at least discuss it.
All right, thank you. Kathleen? I think you're muted, Kathleen.
She may be having a technical difficulties. Let me see if I can help her out. I'll be back.
Okay. All right. Does anyone need to take a break? This might be a good time to take 5.
That would be great. Thank you.
Why don't we take, it's 9:08. Why don't we be back at 9:15?
Okay, thank you very much.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
All right. get started. All right, Kathleen, you're up.
Okay. Okay, so tonight we'll be presenting for your consideration the Menlo Park Fire Protection District fiscal year 21-22 proposed budget. The budget establishes a guideline for anticipated revenues and operating expenditures to ensure that inflows of resources will be adequate to support the delivery of services based on established priorities. The budget is prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP, and conforms with Governmental Accounting Standard Board, GASB, guidelines. And it's also required by the state to adopt a budget prior to the beginning of each fiscal year, so July 1st. We'll start with, let's see, the district uses fund accounting in compliance with GASB. And we have 4 major fund categories: the general fund, capital improvement fund, debt service fund, and urban search and rescue. On the second page of the report, it gives you a description of all the different funds that we use, the 4 different funds. Tonight, we will, in this report, we'll only be talking about general fund and CIP funds. And debt service, except I'll talk about that later. Okay, so at the bottom of the page, on the second page, we have the executive summary. Shows that for fiscal year 21-22, the proposed budget for the 3 fund groups, and we're projecting the beginning fund balance of $62.4 million and projected ending fund balance of $48.6 million for 21-22. The net fiscal impact is a decreased year-end fund balance of 13.7, which is primarily due to the Station 4 rebuild project. Okay, so for on the next page, page 3, we have the general fund fiscal activity. The general fund is the primary fund. It's used to budget and report the results of day-to-day operations and transfers to other funds as needed. The table below shows the general fund's budget summary with multi-year comparison, and it provides a summary of the 18-19 actual, 19-20, and 2021 amended. In fiscal year 21-22, the general fund's overall projected revenue totaled $65.1 million, which included $59.5 million of property taxes and $5.7 million in other operating revenues. The general fund's overall projected expenditures total $62.1 million, which includes $47.3 million on wages and benefits, and $10.1 million of other operating expenditures, and $4.7 million for CalPERS UAL. In addition, the general fund's operating transfer totaled $3 million to the CIP fund, and the result is a balanced budget for fiscal year 21-22. So the general fund revenue, we have projected tax revenues at approximately 91% of the district's overall revenues, and other revenues representing 9%. So property taxes, on the next page, we have the breakout with the projected property taxes and what the descriptions are below that. Has all the different types of property tax the district receives with the descriptions below. Okay, so there it shows that we have proposed total of $59.5 million in property tax. Okay, on the next page, page 5, other operating revenues includes licenses and permits, current service charges, use of money and property, intergovernmental and other revenue. Those are all described below that chart and are projected at 5.7 million, which is approximately 9% of the proposed revenue budget. Then we go into the expenditures. So general fund expenditures for 21-22 is expected to increase by approximately 4.7 million over the prior year's amended budget. Wages and benefits are projected to increase by approximately 4.9 million over the 2021 amended budget. Wages and benefits expenditures represent approximately 76% of total projected expenditures. That's what Rob Solano likes to hear, that we're in that range. So let's see. And below, we have the breakout for all the different wages and benefits on that chart. The next page has the description of the different types of wages and benefits and what they mean. On page 8, the next category is other operating expenditures, and below in that chart shows the other operating expenditures, materials and supplies, contract services, fixed assets, operating transfers out, with a decrease of approximately 4.6% for 21-22. And then the last category of expenditures is operating transfers, which is projected at 3 million. And that will be transferred to capital improvement projects to start funding or to continue funding Station 1. Okay, the next page, we have the capital improvement projects funds. And this accounts for all 7 fire stations and all properties owned by the district. We anticipate the proposed expenditure budget is expected to be 16.7 million, which is mainly due to the construction activity for Station 4, Station 77 mechanic shop, and dorm warehouse. And the warehouse automatic gate in Station 3 ancillary building. The operating transfer in from the general fund, as we just said, is projected to be 3 million to help fund that Station 1. For the debt service fund, we do not have anything in the budget for debt service fund at this time because they will be paid off and done as of June 1st of this year of 2021. Okay, I'm available for any, next page, the last page is the full-time employees and personnel listing. And there are no changes requested or proposed at this time. Now, I'm available for any questions or comments. Also, the full budget is online under finance, under administrative services.
Well, thank you, Kathleen. Any questions for Kathleen?
I have one.
Robert?
Yes, Kathleen, I guess it's back on page 6 or maybe page 50 on the wages, benefits, expenditure budget summary. And are you there?
Yes. I'm there.
Where it says benefits, I noticed it had a minus 11.3%. Could you tell me why, if there's a reason for or what's driving that particular number south the way it's doing?
Yeah, I believe right now it has to do with the 401 or the unrepresented and chief officers, and the funds that were, used for that benefit. That at this time are not, are not there. So we didn't budget any additional funds in anticipation of something being there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, is that pretty typical? I mean, I'm looking at the numbers. If the money is not there, do we anticipate, is there a way we're going to anticipating getting some money in there? Or where did the money come to get in there?
If that gets approved, yeah, we usually will try and find it somewhere, like for example, the thermal imaging that was approved tonight, those funds will be coming probably from the reserve for equipment and apparatus of equipment. And this is the proposed at this time. We have to move things around sometimes.
Okay. There's a method to the madness, so to speak. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions? Chuck?
Kathleen, you've already answered this question for me. I'm asking it again, primarily for the benefit of some people who might be listening, particularly Lynn Bramlett, who talked about the budget for community-based events and so forth. I think the board had a sentiment at one point that none of this would be put into effect until this study was done of the OEM group and how we were doing that, and until we had the mechanism for distributing funds if we chose to do that. But could you tell me, or just repeat again, how much is set aside there potentially for community-based groups, if in fact that's something the district decides to go forward with after the study?
Yeah, let's see. Long, are you on the line? I don't have the detail at this moment for that.
Let me say,
Sorry.
I asked some questions that the chief sent back a response, and it said
Oh, yeah.
$160,000. And I just wanted to,
Okay.
I don't want to quote that like I'm knowledgeable about that, but I'm just repeating what was told to me.
Thank you. Yeah.
Does
Yeah, that's what Long sent, Director. I mean, we knew, regardless of the study and so forth, there was an interest in having enough funds there available. So that's the total amount. I mean, how it's parsed up, it doesn't necessarily give you the detail there, but we can certainly provide that if you need that.
Oh, in fact, we don't even know what that is at this point, right?
Yeah, well, we do know, I mean, within their program budget, it does put that into some categories, but remember, that can always be moved around and so forth, so.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that that she and other people who are interested in this heard that there is money available once this mechanism gets worked out and so forth.
Right. Well, there's direct support too, remember? So a lot of those things where if we need to make copies of manuals or hand out fog guides or whatever it is, there's the ability for us to buy those and distribute those. And I believe we are doing that, so.
I think we discussed that and approved that last month. To be able to do that within your spending limit, right, Harold?
Yeah, I don't know that you even need to give me the authority. I mean, really at the end, it's those guys, responding to, reasonable requests from community groups. I don't think that's changed. I think the only thing that is, is a little bit difficult is if it's not direct support, not to beat a dead horse, but there isn't that mechanism set up yet to do, a grant or whatever you want to call it.
I have just a couple brief questions, Kathleen. Capital improvement projects, page 10. Are we budgeting for a warehouse automatic gate?
Yes.
I mean, do you know what the dollar amount is on that?
Not off the top of my head. I can look it up.
Well, I asked, because I mean, I know we had a proposal, last year to spend $600,000 on an electric gate at the warehouse, and I'm just wondering if that's back.
Hey, Jim, this is the one that got approved with solar.
Right.
So I have to look. I know it made it through the city of East Palo Alto through the planning department, but it's not even close to that.
Okay, so it's a relatively minor amount.
Yeah, yeah, I can send you that number. I know that it's in progress to get it all through the city.
I'm sure I'll learn about it when it's ready to go.
No worries.
Okay. And then the other thing on page 7, I see a 25% increase in overtime, $2 million. We haven't increased, personnel by 25%. What's driving that number upwards?
In talking with the Chief Schaefer, he had said that basically he had taken what the year-end monthly averages were and multiplied them out to come up with that projected number. So taking what's going on now and extending it throughout next year.
Okay. So it's a projection at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike might be on the call. I don't know if I don't see him,
Right.
but he might be on the
think he
call if
might
you have
be.
further questions.
That's all right. I'm satisfied. It's a projection at this point.
Yeah, let me just say this. I mean, what it is, don't forget you have your workers' comp, which we can't always control. You have your wildland fire season deployments. You have your USAR deployments. So all those outside of, quote unquote, calling it backfill, even though all of it's overtime, that all leads to that. Obviously, if it's a USAR or a wildland, it is eventually reimbursable. And there has been COVID expense in there too. So, that's another one where we've applied for reimbursement where it was available. We haven't received anything yet, but we're tracking that as well.
Okay, thank you. Chuck?
I wanted to just follow up on your question, Jim, because Chief, as I understood, we were actually going to have a reduction in overtime with respect to the captains who were becoming battalion chiefs. But that might in turn increase the wages or the salaries that are indicated there. Is that transformation factored into this budget or not?
Yeah, I mean, I'll ask Kathy that. I mean, that's certainly a reality because, that level of career development, which is, to your point, the domino effect of overtime, that factors in. So, I mean, once you give it a level of permanence, you don't have that same, backfill issue that staggers down to the captain level, to the engineer level. I mean, from the BC to the captain to the engineer, that is somewhat, that was a big investment to make that push. So it won't be that large, but I'd have to go to Kathy to tell you what the numbers are on projection.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Dr. Bernstein, and it is included in that, so it will be a lower number than this is showing.
You say it's included, meaning it's not included, right? You haven't factored that change in yet.
I have not factored it. Yes, I've not taken it out. Yes.
Okay. And I'm not pushing this one way or another, just curious, is it possible between now and a month from now, now that it's passed and so forth, that you would recalculate that, or you're not going to, you would just leave it the way it was and assume that out of overtime will go up in the salary perhaps?
I think that at this particular time, we probably will recalculate that in just looking for the funds that we were just talking about. So I think, but not a significant change. Yes, things here will pretty much remain the same unless there's something huge to be changed.
Let me ask one more follow-up on the overtime. There's some thought that we are having a drier year and that there may be more wildland fires and there may be more deployments, which could result in more overtime and things like that. But we're also then expecting that we would get additional reimbursements from California and from the feds or FEMA on that. So in theory, those are supposed to offset each other.
Yeah, there's always a lag because, you have to put in for the reimbursement claim. But yeah, that there is, the good news is they do pay their bills. At least at this point, the state's been pretty good for that. And the federal government's probably even better at some level. But you know, don't forget too, you know, the hiring that we just did with the firefighters that are in the academy, once they come online, that's also going to help us with staffing. So, you know, impacts like workers' comp or people that left who retired, you know, that's kind of that plugging those employees in, and, you know, at a level where that's, you know, for at least a little while, your least expensive employee.
All right, any other questions for Kathleen? All right, is there a motion to approve the budget?
Let me ask just technically, are we supposed to, are we approving it or are we just approving it? We're posting it and then approving it.
I
in
think
June?
we're accepting the report.
We don't actually need a motion. This was just the opportunity for you to hear.
Well,
Kathy's
thank you.
presentation.
Then we'll approve it next month. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, very good.
But at this point, we're going to post it so that it's on the website and so forth.
It is
Jim?
now, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that if there's nothing that has to come back to the finance committee at this point, as Chuck said, we'll just post it on the website at this point, right? And we'll accept the report and then post it as per our procedures.
Well, it probably should be on our agenda for the next finance committee meeting, because in theory, we post it just to see if there is any public comment, and the committee could be a forum for public comment.
Right.
Could
Well, and
be,
don't
okay.
forget, you had two items tonight with, you know, both the items that were on the agenda for both the apparatus and so forth. We'll make sure we adjust to that. Kathy's aware of that as well. That's again why we tried to get this in. I'm not gonna say under the wire, but certainly so that it can be included in the final.
So just so I'm clear, Harold and Chuck, we're gonna bring this back to the finance committee in June with the adjusted budget to reflect tonight's resolutions and, you know, the adopted resolutions for expenses, correct?
Right, yeah.
Okay,
That's-
thank you.
I mean, that's why it was important to plug that in tonight,
Right.
because that way going forward, everybody knows what's going on.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
You're okay with that, Chuck?
Yes, and I'd also just say that if there were other issues that the public or anybody would bring up, that's something that we would consider at the meeting.
Yep.
as well.
Okay, thank you.
And one thing, Chuck, I know you asked this, and I was reminded as you were speaking that, you know, we are increasing that reserve for apparatus. I mean, we have been very diligent. We don't change that. Kathy has a number that we put in there every year, so we grow that fund exponentially. So just so you know, that is programmed in, because the years that we didn't do it was the years that we ended up buying demonstrator fire trucks because we couldn't afford to buy fire trucks. So we're pretty diligent about making sure that reserve has money in it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you very much.
All right, that brings us to the next item. Resolution to award a contract for the Station 3 accessory building. So Harold, do you want to tee that up?
Yeah, I mean, so you have the report, you know, we've gone through this in different committees. I know that Director Bernstein had a number of questions. I know that John Hitchcock is on the line. I'm not sure if Michelle has the ability to unmute him, or he can unmute himself, but he's probably the best person to speak to some of these things. I know that Director Bernstein asked a number of questions about a prefabricated Butler building. I think, you know, if you look at the responses that John gave, and you look at what the amount from WLC for architectural fees and so forth is, it's not an inexpensive undertaking, but, you know, there's also standards in the town of Atherton regarding building that other communities may or may not have. So, you know, we have kind of a twofold issue, which is it strategically makes sense to take the lot that we purchased and put that building on that lot for the reasons that are listed in the report. It won't be inexpensive, but it will be able to last over time based upon, you know, what and how we see the layout of a future fire station. What it will do is it'll immediately address the parking problem, the storage problem, and some space issues and so forth. So, you know, we tried to add in the pieces that were brought up in the committee. I think hopefully we did a good job of, you know, answering some of those questions. You know, I wish I could tell you that, you know, we could do it less expensively. but you know, it's expensive. And don't forget, you know, we're undergrounding pipes, we're adding in, you know, a driveway and asphalt and all the other things that, you know, we have with raw land. So, you know, that's part of this whole cost process as well, and engineering and all the other things that go along with the architectural fees. So,
Rob?
Yeah, Jim, I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution awarding a contract to BK WLC Architects Incorporated, establishing a project budget and approving a project contingency for the Fire Station 3 accessibility building project.
I'll second that.
All right. Moved and seconded. You know, I just have a question, Harold. Does this plan include the restroom facilities or not?
Good question. I know that we had that on the initial drawings. I can check. I think that it does, because the purpose was if we had to use it in the future to house the crew, it would have to have some level of bathroom facility.
Right.
So let me check on that, but I'm pretty sure that it is in there.
I would just like to say, after seeing, you know, Station 4 that was in service for 70 years,
Yeah.
when you amortize these buildings, I think we should make them as fully functional as we can. And I think it's reasonable to put unless the costs just become exorbitant because of the existing infrastructure or something, but, you know, I think we should make it as fully functional as possible.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Look, as someone used to do building, I mean, you know, when the hole's dug, it's easy to put the pipe in, right? So, I mean, that's your chance. I don't, you know, with ADUs and all these other things that they're doing today, and just on the cost level, that makes sense. So, I mean, you know, that in mind, we'll make sure that, you know, at least the stub ups will be there. So if necessary, you can just hook everything up that you needed, whether it's water, certainly power, and so forth with inside the building. So I'll make sure that we have that in mind, because, you know, you're right. I mean, you can do it once. Let's just do it right to make sure that we can cover any option necessary going forward.
All right, hey, Chuck?
Actually, Robert had his hand up before I did.
Let's go for it, Chuck. I'm okay.
But I wanted to speak against this proposal, or at least against proceeding with it right away. We're basically building a garage here, and we're talking about spending $1.25 million for a garage that should cost us less than $50,000. It's something that will temporarily be used to store materials, and it's going to be used as a workout room. And it's just such excess. I mean, just the architect itself costs double what the whole building should cost installed. The proposal includes, eventually this is going to become, and it says right here, it's going to be a place where maybe we store a piece of equipment. And so we have to have, you know, special 1 foot thick slab. We're putting in, what is it here, 60 or 70, oh, here it is, $64,000 worth of air conditioning into a building to house a piece of equipment. We've got a bathroom in there to house a piece of equipment. It's got thousands and thousands, over $22,000 worth of lighting. It's got communications equipment. It just seems to me that and it also includes $12,000 of new fitness equipment. What we already have the fitness equipment. The problem is we don't have a place to put it that's the right place to put it. It just seems to me that it's excess upon excess, and to essentially, we don't know what we're going to need. We don't even know when it comes time to designing the site and what we need. We may need to actually scrape the building and start over again. It seems to me we could put on a prefabricated building for $40,000 or $50,000. And if we had to scrape it, it's insignificant. But to scrape $1.25 million building just seems to me foolish. And I know they said, oh, you know, the neighbors might not like it. But you could, these buildings could be made to look beautiful. I've used these things for school buildings and so forth. You put trellises on them, you grow ivy, you grow things. Nobody sees anything. They're beautiful. I just think that this really isn't thought out at all. And to spend $100,000 just for the architect just seems to me a foolish waste of money. So I think we should think this out a little bit more. I'd like to see it. And by the way, I'll come back to this idea of using it as a garage. I mean, one big question is, where do we store our extra equipment? I don't know. Do we want to store it a little bit here, a little bit there? And is it going to be big enough to store whatever piece of equipment we want to store when the time comes? I mean, there's so much thinking that we don't know about, that to build a garage to last 50 years just makes no sense to me whatsoever.
So, in response to that, I know Director Bernstein asked some questions. So John, I thought did a good job of, answering those questions and addressing some of those points. And I think to, Director McLaughlin's point, it's not just the stub ups for the bathroom. It's making sure that this building can be used for any purpose. And that includes crew quarters. If you're going to build a new facility and tear down the old facility, I mean, there's a lot of options. And so we try to consider, one time building all those things into the facility so that you could use it any way that you need it. If it was storage, if it was crew quarters, if it needs to be modified from one thing to the other. And to the scraping it, that location actually in every design that we put in there, that location never needs to be scraped because of where it is. So we had it on the far side and that didn't work. That was where there was going to be a problem. We've laid a fire station, a 3-bay out on the 2 lots. And that location that currently the building would be in would be a location that we would see never needing to be torn down.
Robert, did you have something?
I did, if I may.
Please, please.
Okay. Reading the report, I think it's a good report, but what it brought to my attention was, and you may have this already, Chief, but do we have any like design standards that has been documented and that we use on a regular basis as we go through now, especially and particularly now that we are looking to redo all our buildings? Do we have such a manual or document that tells us exactly what, in terms of materials, in terms of how the building's gonna look? Because I saw some things in here where the building there were some ideas about wood versus metal or this product versus that product. So do we have such a design standards?
Yeah, I mean, we do. In fact, it's ironic you asked the question because I was told today by one of the firefighters, it's, about Station 4, because I try and go by there regularly, that, we're building them better every single time. That's because we learned from, the one we did previously. So we do have, a 3-bay drive-through model that we use that we lay down on that lot. That's how we know where that location, that building is the best spot, that it should never have to be touched to the point. So it's not ever going to be a problem. We also know that if we did that footprint on that lot, we would need to tear down the fire station because it does encroach on part of it. We could, tear down part of it and keep the apparatus bay intact, although, that would be a little bit weird to do that. However, we've looked at all those options. In terms of finishes and, materials and so forth, yeah, that's in there. And just so you know, the building behind Station 6 where we store the old apparatus, that whole thing with the underground, with the concrete, with the building, with everything there, you're probably looking at about $1 million for that too, because of all the hardscape and so forth. I mean, I understand what Chuck is saying about the thickness of the concrete, but what we're trying to do is make something that if we had to park, an engine that weighs 41,000 pounds inside that garage, that we're not going to buckle the concrete. So all that has been discussed and thought out so that, it can be used for those types of purposes into the future without, having to then stress the infrastructure because we didn't build it to, a standard that could handle the large pieces of equipment that we have and so forth. So, and look, I know it's not inexpensive, but you know, again, Atherton has standards. I mean, you drive around that neighborhood there, and, you know, we're not going to just throw up a crappy looking Butler building. That's not going to go. And I think we're going to run into problems if we try it. Even we built stations 3, 5, and 77. If you notice, that station looks different because they added the wainscoting with the brick. So they added an enhancement feature just to make it look a little bit nicer. And that was done because, you know, Atherton expected it to be a little bit nicer because of the neighborhood. So I get it. I understand it's not inexpensive, but let me tell you, you know, going forward, I don't know how it's going to get cheaper. And the architect, just so you know, that's the same architect that's doing the work for us on Station 4, and of 3 vendors, including one vendor that just does commercial buildings, not fire stations. He was the least expensive. So, you know, it's not cheap these days, but right now it's only getting more expensive too to do the work. So
one last thing, along those same line, and I know you say we have this particular documentation, because I think if not to be a cookie cutter type of operation, because you gotta have to allow flexibility for each city and each neighborhood, but I think the core of those standards should be consistent throughout all the buildings, you know, in terms of materials and etc. All the external stuff can be adjusted according to neighborhood preferences. But if we have those particular standards, you know, because I noticed that we asked the architect to look at a metal building in the report, you know, that's costing more money because you got to ask the architect to go and do their research. So anytime we can kind of pull away from asking people to do extra things, that's going to cost us money. So I think part of knowing what those basic design standards are and focusing in on neighborhoods at that point and what cities want, I think we may be able to save some costs, you know, along the way. Not a whole lot, but we'll save enough. Maybe not $1 million, but I know we can save some.
Well, yeah, and to your point, I mean, this was brought up in the committee meeting. So we did ask the town, I think on that report, John found out, I mean, that was not what the town would prefer. And, you know, so I'm sensitive to that too. I mean, we've had our differences with Atherton. I think they're building a nice civic center, and they're looking at us and saying, you know, if I'm them, you know, we want you to build something equally nice in a residential neighborhood in our town. So, and it's our facility, and I think it'll be good for the long term. It is not inexpensive, but it is in line with what happened at Station 6 as well. So I don't want to say that we spent money in the back of Station 6 to bring the museum over, to build that other building, on the concrete, the hardscape, the fuel, all that different stuff. When you add it all up, you're looking at $1 million. I mean, it adds up quickly, especially because we're looking, you know, it's not like we're just making a driveway out of concrete. You know, yeah, you're looking at 8, 10, even 12 inches of cement, double reinforced, because you don't want it to crack up, right? And so, you know, all that, again, you have to have underground pipes that go back to the back of that lot. That means that's all piping that has to be put in, dug up. So there's infrastructure that's going to cost on this project too.
Thank you.
All right, any further discussion on this issue? All right, Michelle, would you call the vote, please?
I'll ask for public comment first. If anybody is interested in providing public comment, you could raise your hand or hit *9 if you called in. Seeing none, I will take the vote. Director Bernstein?
Nay.
Director Jones?
Yes.
Director Crawley?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director McLaughlin?
Aye.
All right, thank you, directors.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next item, review and discuss revisions to the Board of Directors Policies and Procedures Manual. You know, this is a ongoing item. You know, it's an annual process. I already asked, you know, for one thing, I kind of did it unilaterally. I think it's chapter 9 needed to be made gender neutral. So I asked that that be done. So Did you have something, Robert?
Yeah, I was gonna ask my question when you finish your comment. I just wanted to, if you could kind of point to those items that you saw that need to be gender.
Well, it was the whole chapter. I think it was chapter 9.
And
Yeah,
it,
I read that.
It was strictly, male pronouns.
and Director Jones, it's attachment C in the packet, which is page 333.
333.
Yeah. Towards the very
Sims?
end.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Oh, I see it. Okay, I missed that one. Gotcha.
Myself. So,
Wait, Jim,
I just read the regular one. Okay.
Virginia,
this is chapter 9, right? So you made it, who did the work on this?
I'd have to ask Harold. I don't know if the attorney did that, if Nicole did it, or
Yeah, I believe, well, it's a question for Stephen. I know we didn't do it, and I don't know if it was Nicole or Stephen or somebody else, but I think he could answer that.
Okay, I got you now. That makes sense. Okay.
you're
Stephen's
Stephen.
muted too.
You're muted, Stephen. This will be the first time we've heard from you tonight, and we don't want to miss a word.
You might have the wrong headset. We went through that the other day, remember?
Kind of like the issue I had. Here.
Hey, Steve, just so you know, you show that you're unmuted, but something's up.
Can't hear you, Steve. Let's chant Steve. Let's chant Steve.
He understands that we can't hear him.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Whoa. Oh, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I prepared a set of Chapter 9 revisions to remove gender pronouns and make it gender neutral at Director McLaughlin's request. I don't see that in the agenda, so I'm not sure if the version that I prepared is the one that was ultimately reviewed and inserted into the packet.
It is attachment C on page 333.
Yeah.
But that's not updated on the front page.
No, it's not. That's, yeah, it's the original.
So in the packet, I've included the entire board policy manual.
No, I got that.
And then that's attachment A, and then attachment B is the committee and liaison assignments proposed changes.
Right.
And attachment C is the rules of order changes. So yes, you do have the entire board policy packet as attachment A. And those, nothing has been changed on that. So it's just
Right.
page
And
300.
attachment C looks like my work, for better or for worse.
So Steve, do we have an understanding of how much that cost?
How much it cost for me to prepare that?
Mhm.
I could look and find out easily enough, but I don't know off the top of my head. No,
Okay, that'd be good to know.
I don't recall it as being a significant bit of time. But I
Okay,
would be happy to look for you.
okay. Whenever you, I was just curious. Thank you.
So, Michelle, can you help me out with the process that we have
So-
followed in the past on doing this annual revision?
So usually what would happen is as I just said, the entire policy manual unedited as it currently is in your packet. And if the directors want to review it and if they have any proposed changes or updates or revisions, then you can come back to the June meeting or forward those to me and I'll prepare any updates. And then I'll present it at the June meeting and then we can have the board approve those individually or reject them or approve them. And then we'll be done with the annual review of the policy.
Is this typically reviewed at the committee level or no?
It hasn't been.
Okay,
So
Robert?
Yes, question, it seems like, I think it's a great idea that what the proposal is for removing any gender-based language. The question is why none and why not the whole document?
You know, I was, yeah, I was reviewing Article 9 and that
Popped
jumped
out.
that jumped out at me. This was something, when I was in state service, we went through this process
Sure.
20 years ago. And in fact, I personally went through more than one manual and made it gender neutral. So that's just jumped out at me. There may be other chapters.
Yeah,
that
just
contain, you know, that need the same attention.
right,
You
right.
know, I will do that review.
I saw, I went through it and I saw, it's all over the document, but, you know, and that's why I'm asking the question. It seems like we need to do it on the entire document.
Oh,
you know,
I agree.
in and of itself, so. But anyway, who's gonna do it? I don't know, maybe Human Resource Committee, I don't know. But I think somebody need to do it.
Well, Harold, I would ask you, I don't know if you have the staff to do a project like that or.
Well, we've done, you know, we've worked with the board members before in committee, and then tried, you know, all the board members bring in whatever proposed changes that they have. I mean, you know, again, it's up to you. I think, you know, we can look at it. I don't want to just I'm leaving, so I don't want to just commit people and go, yeah, hey, we'll do this whole project. But we can talk about it. I mean, Francine, you know, we have a very capable HR manager. I'd like to talk to her about it. I think there's reasons to do some in-house work that I think would be beneficial to the board, but I think equally, these things are always a process, right? So, you know,
I think
you want a
Stephen,
good document, there's no doubt about that, so.
you know, Stephen's treatment of Article 9 could be a good model to use,
Totally, yeah.
you know, for the rest of the manual.
Jim, I couldn't hear you very well.
Said the work that Stephen Miller did on Article 9 could serve as a model for revising the entire manual and reducing or making it gender neutral.
And this is a good example of the kind of feedback that any board member can forward to me. And then we could try to complete that by the June meeting so that the board can review the updates and accept them at that time. And then we'll have a new, fresh, clean board policy manual.
Okay, so
So feedback from you could email me directly, individual directors, and then I'll make the proposed changes in a red line version and a clean version so you could see it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
now
that's
as far as updating the entire policy with gender neutral language, that might be more of a project that may take some additional time, but anything else, you know, please email me any of your suggestions and I can make those recommended changes.
quick question.
Virginia?
Steve, do you know how long I'm just trying to gauge Michelle's time since the chief is going to be leaving soon. And, you know, I want her to, you know, have time to do her other work. So thank you for offering that. So just Steve, do you know how long it took you to do this for section 9? About?
I really couldn't say. This was some time ago. I think it was in maybe February or March that President McLaughlin asked me to do this, and I did it. I think it was, I really couldn't say.
Okay.
Not long.
Wouldn't it be easier?
Minutes, not hours.
Jim,
Yes.
wouldn't it be easy just to hire a temp to come in just to do something like this? I mean,
But
yeah.
that's why I asked Harold, what the staff capacity is for a project like this.
Yeah, let us look at it. I mean, Michelle's bringing up a good point. Sometimes it's a search and replace, you know, but I think, you know, equally asking, you know, Francine and HR, because I think there is a component that is relevant there too. Just, you know, give us a month to figure it out. We can come back and give you a better answer.
But in the meantime, with anything else, please forward me your suggested revisions, and we'll look further into the gender neutral language. But anything else, please forward it to me and we could present that at the June meeting, at least get started on that, have that ready for you.
Super.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good to me.
All right. Any other comment on this one? All right. Michelle, if you could advance the agenda on the screen. I've been pulling things out of order and
There you go.
there we go.
17 committee reports.
All right, committee reports. Finance committee.
I think everything we've discussed was presented at tonight's meeting.
Okay. EPREP.
We did not have a meeting this month, but I have requested that we have our scheduled meetings every month unless otherwise notified in terms of the staff from me. Because right now, it sounds like the staff is not inviting me to some of the CERT meetings because they're afraid that there might be a Brown Act violation, even though I don't think it, there would be because of Director Jones's leadership role in REPACT. So by not having a committee meeting, I'm pretty much left in the dark as the chair of the EPREP committee with, a mandate to kind of work with the volunteer groups and keep track of what's happening with the OEM department. So I talked to Michelle about having that. So just to give everyone a heads up, we will be having regular EPREP committee meetings.
Okay. Strategic planning.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I think we've pretty much covered everything here tonight that we had spoken about. Thank you.
Okay. Rob and I met as the HR committee and looked at the policy surrounding travel to visit vendor sites. If you remember, the issue was, should we put that in the contract or should the district bear the expense directly? Just to be able to exercise more control. We included Francine, and she was going to work on developing a policy that will present to the board for consideration. So, all right, which brings us to liaison reports. Do any of the liaisons have? Oh, yeah, Robert, you I think wanted to discuss an issue.
I do. Michelle, can you keep me up?
Yes, give me one moment, please.
Okay. One moment. I can't sing while we're waiting if you guys want it, but I know you don't want
So wait
that.
for the knock knock joke.
Knock knock joke. Okay. Knock knock, Michelle, you there? Okay. You may or may not be able to see it. I can, but it's just I'm just giving a little brief report, liaison report because I keyed into East Palo Alto. So I had a meeting on the 17th, which is a conference call with Lisa Gauthier, Yarborough Gauthier. She's the councilwoman for City of East Palo Alto. Lisa and I go back many, many years. And she's really has been instrumental in terms of for us to talk about different issues. And so I brought it up to her about having a joint meeting between the fire board and the City of East Palo Alto. The focus of our meeting was mainly to talk about that, look at various things that we that are possibilities in terms of dates and time. So just kind of give you a summary of what went on. So we spoke about the joint meeting, and she was very receptive about the idea and felt that other council members would be very interested as well. The activities that is in motion right now is that she was going to talk with the city manager and the president, the mayor, today at the meeting, at city council meeting tonight, because they have on the 1st and 3rd, they have a council meeting, and bring this subject up. And we're gonna talk tomorrow about the result of that. So the recommendation I have for the board, if we can, whether we be able to do it tonight, is one recommendation is for to have a meeting, approve a meeting on June the 8th, which is the second Tuesday of June, as a special meeting, joint meeting between the city council and the fire board. Councilman Gutierrez, also, we talked about looking at potential subject areas of conversation, and I'm hoping that the board may have some other areas that we can talk about. But we talked about, it was on her mind about the July 4th fireworks, what kind of support that the district might be able to provide the city. Last year we did meet with mayor at the time, Wallace, at IKEA, getting a demonstration of the drones, but there was nothing there. The motivation, not too much happened after that. So I know the chief been talking to the police chief, and so hopefully this year a little bit more coordinated effort can take place. But kind of look at what else could be done. I think in terms of that support they may need, that we may be able to provide to them regarding July 4th, because I live there, and we had to suffer through not only July 4th, but July 5th, July 6th, and July 7th, as well as New Year's Day. We also talked about the home vaccination support, and it was the timing that the chief mentioned that as well. And I think that may be another area that we might, because the numbers are low, Chief. I know that, I hear that all the time. And so being able to kind of flush out anything else that we might be able to help them along that line, as well as the LRAD system. In terms of, since we have that monopole up there, 100-foot monopole on the fire station, to really start to try to figure out the push to make that happen, and to kind of really talk to them in a more strategic manner about the benefits of that. I know we have done it before, but I come from school of thought. You got to tell them once, twice, and sometimes a third time, repeating the same message before they hear it. So the recommendation is, again, the fire board, for us to, as a group, to look at the topic, any other topic areas that we might want to discuss with the city council members at this joint meeting. So hopefully, if I don't know if we can tonight, but I'm hoping that we can I can be able to walk away from this meeting back to her tomorrow and say here, and give her the list of things that we would like to talk about, and at least if the June 8th date work for everyone, to kind of focus on that date, and see if if it meets their schedule as well.
And that's a Tuesday, just so everybody knows.
Tuesday, yeah.
Chuck?
Yeah, I just wanted to second the idea of discussing these. I mean, some people are calling them fireworks, but I can tell you, I live about a block from major apartment complexes on the west side of 101. And all this started about 3 weeks ago. And what we're hearing at night are not fireworks. These are bombs. I mean, the whole house shakes, glassware shakes. These are major explosive devices. And I read the reports that come from next door, which includes Menlo Park and East Palo Alto. And lots of people in both communities are very upset about this. There are a lot of people that work odd shifts at the hospital and things like that, and it's awakening them from their sleep, and they're having trouble sleeping. It wreaks havoc with the pets in the area. All the dogs start barking and so forth. Babies wake up. I mean, all kinds of stories. I'm talking about probably on Nextdoor, there are 50, 60, 70 people writing in to talk about how bad this is. And in the past, the police department, I'm not faulting them, but they haven't really wanted to do very much about this because they feel like they're already in a kind of marginal status with the community, and they don't want to be hassling what many people perceive as the actions of some teenagers and so forth. And so they don't want to hassle them. But I can tell you it's a huge, huge issue. I'm not sure what role the fire district can play in it. Yeah, there's some fires, but I think what this does to the health of people in the community in terms of waking them from sleep and so forth. I'm talking about things that go off at 2 o'clock in the morning that wake everybody up. It's really some serious stuff. And there's no way these are firecrackers or a little Roman candles or anything. These are things that sound like, and in fact, one guy wrote in who had been in Iraq or Afghanistan and mentioned that he had PTSD and that this was reminding him of his wartime experiences and so forth. It's a very serious problem.
So, Robert, you are looking for a commitment tonight to June 8th?
If it's possible, I would like to.
I can commit. I don't know if everyone
commit.
else has access to their calendar or.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be ideal.
That's the week between your committee meetings and your board meetings. So Tuesday, the first week is committee, second week is this proposed meeting, and the third week would be the board meeting. So it seemed to work out pretty nicely.
Robert, would that be 7 o'clock?
The time, we didn't set a time, but I think, they still locked in like everybody else, 7, it can be 6, because I know they do meet sometime at 6 o'clock or 6:30.
Okay, we can leave that detail to you. Yeah.
Robert, count me in on that.
Okay.
I'm
So-
available on June 8th too, Robert.
Okay, super. That's fantastic. So
Thanks for
we got-
getting this in motion.
So is there, in terms of agenda items, there was 3 items. You can't see it. Michelle, can you scroll up a little bit so they can see the bottom, if you can?
See what I can.
But anyway, it's the 3
Can you
items.
see anything now?
No, need a little bit
Hasn't
more.
moved.
They haven't moved at all.
Yeah, I'm kind of limited. Sorry.
Oh, you're limited. Oh my, I didn't think Michelle could be limited. Okay.
I'm not limited. My computer screen is limited. Let me.
That's okay. I can just say what they are. It's a 4th of July fireworks support, if any. I think last year, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a mail out that went out to the neighborhood in East Palo Alto. There you go. Thanks, Michelle. It did reminding people about, I guess it's a policy the district has, or how was that framed?
It's illegal. Fireworks are illegal in the fire district. But let me just say this without getting into too great a depth. We've been working with East Palo Alto Police Department for 2 weeks already. So just know there's things going on.
Yeah. So it's just a
We
matter.
we didn't wait this year. I know it may seem like it's not happening, but there actually are things happening that I don't want to get into. But
Yeah.
we're working with them.
So, because I know Lisa brought that up too, in terms of, trying to work with the police department. So,
Yeah, they've adopted a much more aggressive posture than they have in the past.
and the home vaccination support, I don't know,
After Thursday, I hope I'm going to have good news. I believe it was 120 people in East Palo Alto on a list, and we've been able to vaccinate 1. So it was 119 that had already been vaccinated or, no longer needed it. But like I said, Thursday's meeting hopefully will
clarify more.
take the handcuffs off to some extent, because we've actually got people on the list. And again, I'll send it out to you later in the week once we have the meeting, we have people that have since died. We have people that have moved. We have
Oh.
people that have received both vaccinations. I mean, that's a month. So the data that we have is, it's sometimes a month or older. So, it's not helpful, right? It's been a lot of effort for very little yield just because we have bad data.
Right.
Jim? Jim?
Yeah, I don't think Robert's done with his,
Oh, I was just gonna add to that with the home vaccination, that Uber has set up a program where they'll pick people up for free to get them vaccinated. And I don't know how we can, integrate that into this system, but they made that offer last week nationally.
Yeah, we're going to their house, Rob. So I think that one way that's even easier, but again, with the list that the county
No,
gave,
no,
old of the data,
Yeah, I understand you. Yeah, it's,
You can always bring it up in the meeting. I mean, that's the point of having a meeting, sharing stuff with people.
Well, I think what'll be helpful, Robert, on this topic is, if we're given the latitude to do it, we can finish this stuff, get everybody that needs to be done. I don't know why people even need to be homebound. We're certainly capable to go out to anybody that needs it. And it's Johnson & Johnson, so it's a one-shot deal. We wouldn't even need to go back,
Yeah, there's a what I do know, there's a relationship somehow, I think, kind of torn between the city and the county. And, when the county wanted to do something, like they came down 2 weeks ago through the Emergency Operations Center through Jeff Norris, and they sent out a FMC alert asking people to come join them to walk the neighborhood. And this was 2 days before they wanted somebody to come out to do that. So that kind of last minute planning has been going on for the last year and a half. So we need to figure out with the city if we can do something to try to avoid this last minute notification and last minute planning kind of thing.
Yeah, so the good news is we're a pilot. The bad news is that they've controlled the way in which we can communicate. What I'm going to ask them to do is allow us to communicate to the community directly so that, the input comes right to us and the information's fresh, because, the inability to do that is leading to the problems that we're having.
Yeah. We need control of that, or a better
Well, there you
support.
go. That's the word, is control. I mean,
Control.
control's the other way right now, and that would be the word I would use, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense the way that it's being done, and it is over controlling. So,
Robert, do you have what you need to?
Yeah, well, anybody besides Rob bringing up talking about
Virginia,
Uber?
something? Virginia?
Oh, are we done? Are you done with your report? I just had a quick question regarding the fireworks stuff that Harold mentioned, but I can wait until Robert's done.
So if there's anybody else got any topics that they want to bring up besides the Uber that Rob brought up? Okay, if not, then we'll.
Robert, what do they want with the LRAD? Do you have any specifics that we can change or look at?
Well, I think we need to kind of, at this point, it was just brought up in terms of just, looking at that again. I can probably do some more fishing around to kind of figure out exactly, kind of pinpoint, if I can, exactly what they would be interested in considering. Because, and maybe we just need to go in there and sell them all over again on the idea in a different way. They may be in a better mindset. So I'll begin to talk to Lisa about that. Ruben Abrika has been very good in terms of organizing the West Side in terms as a like a coordinator, neighborhood coordinator on the West Side of with all the apartment complex. So he's on the council, so he's all behind anything around that. So I think we just may have to look at how we're going to approach him on that issue again. So maybe we can talk, Chief, and before the meeting, or any board members got any ideas, you can just kind of shoot it to them, and we'll just bring it up at the meeting.
Okay, Robert, are you
I'm
done?
done. Yes, I'm
Okay, I have
done.
a
Sorry.
quick question. No problem. Before I forget, Harold, you said that you're working with PD. I know you don't want to go into details, but are you working with PD specifically for the July 4th fireworks support, or are you looking at things now? Because as Chuck said, there are fireworks going off. I mean, I'm even
Ongoing
seeing it
operations.
on on next door over here, which is on the west side, and Chuck's.
Well, we're working with East Palo Alto. I can tell you that it's an ongoing operation. I have not spoken to Menlo Park, or the police chief and I are supposed to have a meeting coming up. So, you know, I haven't met him yet per se, but that's in the works. And so if you're telling me we talking about the county or the city of Menlo Park has got issues on your?
Well, I think, I don't know, our next door thing is a pretty wide net. I mean, I think it's just over here on the west side, which
I
I don't think it's an isolated problem.
No, but East Palo
Side
Alto
of the
tends to
district.
be a little bit more off the hook than.
That's, yeah. Yeah, no, I get it. I just didn't know.
Which is why we started earlier and, you know, didn't want to have the same issues that we had last year. So we've.
Yeah,
I give
okay.
Chief Johnson a lot of credit. We've been working together for, you know, at least a month right now, but the last couple of weeks specifically, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
You bet.
All right. Any other liaison reports? All right, reports, requests of directors. Go
I
around
don't
the
have
table
any.
here. Chuck?
Well, I have one item I'd like to bring up. I don't have anything organized about it, but I would like to see it discussed at a committee meeting or perhaps, and that relates to the requirement for vaccinations on the part of our staff, particularly the staff that serves the public, which is almost everyone. I think everybody's kind of afraid to step on civil rights and freedom of choice and things like that. But we have a situation where the firefighters are living together for 2 days. And right now the law is that anyone who's not vaccinated, I mean, they have to keep a mask on at all times. My guess is that that's not happening, but I have no reason to believe that. It's just my guess that somebody would not sit with a mask all day long. And I think that an unvaccinated firefighter is a risk to the community insofar as they're providing perhaps very close contact support to somebody who's injured or needs assistance. And it's also a threat to the wider community insofar as if one person somehow caused the illness of a whole firehouse, that firehouse goes down and is not in operation and is quarantined for a period of time. And we don't have enough staff to support quarantines of a whole firehouse. And I'm seeing, for example, that for example, universities are going to be requiring vaccinations for anybody who's living in dormitories. They may not be requiring them for people living, just attending classes, but some are. I had a report from the university I attended yesterday that said all students are going to be required to be vaccinated in order to return to campus. It just seems like a movement that many people appreciate and feel safer in. And I wonder about the dynamics of a situation where there's 3 or 4 people living in a station. One person's not vaccinated and the others are vaccinated. It just seems to me that there's a risk to teamwork and morale, really in both directions, but that we ought to go with the good of the community and the good of the majority of people here and require vaccination. And if we don't require vaccination, we probably need to require, masking or something. Or we have a firehouse that's an unvaccinated firehouse or something, and the people who object to it would all be assigned to that one firehouse. I'm not, anyway, I just think we ought to discuss the options and how we feel about mandating something like this. And I'm going through the same kind of thing with the school that I'm at. I know we've got, we required it of all of our teachers. And we, out of, 60 or 70 people, we had one person who doesn't want to do it. And that person's going to be required to wear a mask and to quarantine and so forth. But we're now trying to decide whether we're going to have all the students vaccinated when those are available. I know it's a hard issue, but I think it's something that we should be talking about. We should be talking about before everybody else in the community talks about it, because we have more exposure both within a firehouse and also with the public.
Chuck, I would suggest that that's something that should be referred to HR.
That's your prerogative. I think that would be a fine place for it.
Okay. Well, again, I'm trying to follow our policy here. Do we need, does that need to be approved by the board?
It would be good to have a consensus.
Around bringing this to the HR committee? Is
Yes.
that the issue?
So what are we bringing to the, moving to the HR? Because Chuck
Well,
said a
just
lot.
the whole issue is, should we, do we have the authority? Should we, make vaccination a condition of employment?
Well, Steve kind of gives some idea about legally if there's, how much of an arm can we twist to make that happen?
So I think it's a great idea to either agendize this for a future meeting or refer it to a committee, but I don't think it's a great idea to have a substantive discussion on this point this evening.
I'll support its referral to the HR committee. I think it's something that should be addressed.
Sounds good.
Okay. Robert, Virginia, I don't know if you have any thoughts or.
No, I think that it's, to move the agenda, I think it's a great idea. That's a good starting place.
Okay.
Can I just suggest
I
one
think if it has to go anywhere, it should start at the HR committee.
I just wanted to mention one other resource also. I think a legal thing is certainly one, and I mean, we've researched that for us, but I think it would be good if legal could give some input to that. But it's also a matter of potentially collective bargaining, which would mean that either perhaps Eddie or Stephen could provide some input on that as well.
Well, I think we need to,
No, the HR committee will take it up. All right. Any other reports or requests? All right, President's report. I think anything I had to say, I've already said. So, Michelle, is there any public comment, or Harold, do you have something?
Yeah, one more thing that came out of strategic planning was the Fire Station 1. You're having a special meeting to address moving that to get to, what do we want to do with that particular facility? And there was a number of questions. I mean, strategic planning didn't really have the time on their agenda and said, hey, let's move this to a special meeting. So then it's a matter of the timing of that and when you want to have it, so.
Well, is it, I'm a little unclear. Does that belong in strategic planning or?
Well, it went through there and they didn't, they gave it a look and said, hey, you know what, this is a big enough deal that with all the questions that all the board members need to answer, push it to a special meeting and so I can talk to you on Thursday about it and send you the report too.
So you prepared a staff report on this issue?
Yeah, we did. I can
Okay.
send it to you.
Okay. Then is there any discussion on that, or if it
Yeah, I think you just got to fit it in the schedule. You know what I mean? Somewhere.
again, if the strategic planning is recommended that it go to a special meeting, then we'll get one scheduled, get one set up. All right, Michelle, is there any other public comment?
I don't see any public comments. If anybody wants to raise their hand or hit *9, seeing none, I'm going to say no.
Then I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Very good. Michelle, could you call the vote?
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye. Good night, everyone.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Thanks,
Thanks,
Michelle. Thanks, Harold.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank
Have
you.
a good evening.
Bye.